This is Signal and Noise, bringing clarity to data, tech, and AI.
Possible 2026 Miami Day 2 with the one and only, often spoken about, David Nierenberg. How are you, man?
What's up, bro?
I love to say your name because I think it's frequently fucked up. People mess this up all the time.
You might love it, but I don't love when people say my
Well, hey,
name.
you got a multi-syllabic name. My name's 2 syllables, Brett House, and it gets messed up all the time. It doesn't travel. People call me Bread.
Bread?
Bread, everywhere in the world.
Do they fuck up the house too?
The house, generally not.
Okay.
Generally, the house is
All right, so we're
maybe a house or house, but hey, great. You're the SVP of digital at Intermedia
That's
Advertising, right?
Yeah.
You were on the pod before with Sarah Caputo, who were at dinner last night, and you've written a lot and talked a lot in the industry about not only sort of not ad fraud, but sort of media efficiency. And where advertisers can be more effective in leveraging their dollars.
I mean, within the efficiency in caboodle, you got ad fraud, you got different types of waste that go beyond just ad fraud.
Yeah,
you've got arbitrage. You've got bad revenue models. You've got vendors trying to pull one over on their clients. I mean, it's just it's a fun.
Yeah, and you've been pretty outspoken about what's wrong and what needs to be fixed, and you've exited organizations because of that outspokenness.
That's correct. And then somebody has to be, right, because who wants to work in an industry where all the great efforts that we put in ultimately don't matter because a few entities are corrupting the ecosystem and getting away with bad practices and diluting the efficacy of advertising, which is ultimately bad.
Yeah, and it's all like a short-termism, right? It's all about kind of a profit drive to say we need to spend these dollars that were allocated to me, whether I'm an agency or otherwise, by the brand, regardless of the sort of the media buy output, right? Like if you're buying fraudulent inventory or just crap inventory that is going to underperform or not meet the needs of the client for that particular campaign, they're going to do it because they've got to spend the money. Is that the
I think
oversimplification?
I think it's a bit oversimplified. I think maybe that was more relevant several years ago than it is now to a degree, because I feel like we as an industry now care a bit more about media quality, and media buyers are getting more savvy and technical and really putting in more of the work to validate the inventory that they're buying. Not everybody, of course.
Yeah.
But there's more and more, and there's more and more people and companies that you could put in that sophisticated bucket, right? So I think, by and large, many agencies, especially independent agencies, want to do a good job. They want their clients. They operate on relatively transparent media models.
Yep.
So the incentives aligned with the client incentives. But naturally, on the holding company side of things are a bit more squirrely, and I'm always amazed at how holding companies are good at innovating new ways to fuck their clients.
Yeah, and let's dive into that. So, I mean, do you think that one of the causes of this is principle-based buying? I mean, do you think that drives, or do you think principle-based buying is a good economic decision to say we've got buying power as a let's say an agency holdco, we can buy at volume and then in a sense arbitrage off and sell this back to our clients. But when you're selling premium inventory for high CPM rates to your clients that cost you 50 cents CPM, that to me seems the part that gets a little disingenuous, right? Because you're selling cheap inventory and potentially misrepresenting what it really is, when in fact it's just sort of raw reach, but it may not be brand safe. It may not really drive any outcomes because you may not be actually hitting anybody that's.
Well, you're going to be driving outcomes. It's just like, how are you measuring those outcomes? What are those outcomes? Are you properly assessing via an independent measurement system those outcomes, or are you relying on your agency or brand or ad tech partner via their own home built measurement system to measure those outcomes, right? Grade their own homework. No, that's really what all goes into effect. But I'll tell you this anecdote I heard from a friend at a holding company. So they had a big brand, right? And the big brand wanted to decrease their budget significantly year over year, but maintain the level of work required to manage those budgets, right?
Yeah.
So the amount of people that were required to manage the smaller budget versus the big budget was still the same.
Yeah.
But now
yeah.
if you have a smaller budget, you're not going to be able to support
The same number of
the
FTEs.
same number
Yeah.
of FTEs, correct. So thus layoffs. But the agency brought a principle-based buying model to the brand, and the brand signed off on it, and they were able to retain all the employees.
Yeah. Yeah. And clearly that's changing with Agentic, with sort of the,
Well, this is recently happened.
yeah.
This
No,
recently happened.
yeah. But you're also seeing on the agency side, I mean, their FTE model, there's sort of that revenue structure around
Right.
supporting these accounts with large, basically managed services. That's under threat right
It's
now.
under threat. It's not sustainable. In this case, the brand was happy to sign off on the principal media deal because it meant that there would have to be no layoffs and the level of quality of work would remain.
Yeah.
But, it was a sacrifice. They gave them transparency in return for quote unquote efficiency.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, do you think that that's just kind of a symptom of agencies sort of failing to adapt to what's happening around them?
Yeah, I think so.
And it's almost like a gap filling exercise. It's like, hey, maintain our margins, maintain our FTR revenue model as long as we can, because we're not ready to make that full change. At
Right.
This point,
And,
right?
it's kind of sad.
You get your quarterly results that you've got to report. And if you start to see things dipping, it's going to have an impact on shareholder value, and it's going to have an pressure on the business.
Right. And, the winds of change have been fluttering for 10 years now. You can see that anyone who cared enough to look and do their homework could see that the legacy agency model was not sustainable long term, especially with brands just knocking commissions down more and more and more.
Yeah.
Something had to change, yet the change has been a move towards a principal media buying structure. With credit to the industry, we always find a way to move backwards rather than forward.
Yeah. And it adds opacity. Like it makes the whole process a bit more opaque because you don't really know the true value. And Rio and I and you we've all talked about this. It's like, you'll realize that the markups are at a rate that just is unacceptable, right?
Right. So like in the case of the anecdote I just told you, in this case, the brand got full transparency into what they were buying.
Yeah.
But they didn't get transparency into how much the agency paid up front for that.
Yeah.
Right? So they saw the final price. They got the publisher level transparency, but they didn't know what ultimately the true CPM of that media was.
Yeah.
So, that was a sacrifice they were willing to.
Yeah, and we've talked about that case study where you do an audit, you realize they were charging 4 or 5x what they were actually paying for the media, right? Which I don't know how they were representing in this particular case study, how they were representing the media to the client,
right?
As other than just a reach play, right? Because was it being represented as premium audiences, premium inventory, premium publishers? Because in that case, your argument would fall apart because or you could just mask it by saying, hey, these are exponentially higher CPMs than what they actually paid for. I think that was the problem, right? Is you're buying cheap inventory and charging expensive, more premium rates when in fact it wasn't premium.
Well, we don't know.
That's
I can't answer that question.
Well, yeah. Well, in this case, this was a case study that from Rio that he ran, and they saw it. They saw it all in the spreadsheet. It was a spreadsheet that was accidentally sent to him by a client, and they saw the markup rates, and they saw how it was represented to the client, and they're like, "This is complete bullshit." They called out the agency for. Let's pivot from that to CTV, because that's an area that you got a ton of interest in and involvement in. The CTV ecosystem, from both a measurement perspective, from a fragmentation perspective, and even a quality of inventory perspective, there's challenges there. Tell me what you think are some of the biggest challenges right now with CTV it's clearly a growing space. There's a larger growing video media space. But what do you think are the biggest challenges with CTV?
I think the biggest challenge ultimately with CTV right now is the lack of appreciation, understanding, and patience that brands have for it as a channel.
Yeah.
The performance CTV narrative has convinced many of these brands, especially the SMBs and the DTCs and some of the smaller ones, that don't have massive budgets to spend, that CTV can perform like a Google or a Meta.
Yeah.
Right. And with a Google or a Meta, you expect results almost instant.
Yeah, exactly.
And you see all the numbers right there and they look good. CTV, you need one, you can't just run a small budget, right? You're not going to see great results or learn much with a small budget.
Yeah.
You need to spend and you need time in market and you need to gather learnings and then you need to optimize. And unfortunately, a lot of these brands don't understand that. They'll do a small CTV test, not see what they wanted to see, and then they'll turn off and be like, all right, I'm just going, I got a CTV is not for me.
Yeah.
Right.
And but is that is that misapplied expectations as to what type of results, what type of KPI CTV is meant to deliver? Because if you think of traditional CTV, technically should be served on the television glass.
Right.
It isn't always that way.
Right.
You've got a lot of cheap CTV inventory that sort of masks the CTV that's being served on other devices.
Well, this matter. You're watching Hulu on your iPads now or your phone.
Yeah.
But there's not a ton of that type of inventory.
Yeah.
I'll usually just go for CTV only, but like the old device buy, usually like it's 80% CTV, 20% mix of mobile, desktop, tablet.
Yeah.
If it's below 70% CTV, then something's usually off.
Yeah, something's usually off, and you're getting kind of fake out of
something the string.
Yeah. No, so back to that point about expectations around CTV, because if I think of CTV as sort of sound, sight, and motion, generally big screen, immersive environments, it reminds us of linear TV, right? And what is linear TV for? Brand building, brand awareness,
Correct.
the halo effect
Correct.
around brands, right? And then you have deeper funnel, mid-funnel tactics that are more direct response, right? It's like you see a Toyota ad and then you're at the dealership level, right? And suddenly you're seeing a dealership online, they're potentially retargeting you.
Yep.
That's a more down funnel, like come into the dealership, take a test drive. It's a different KPI. Yep. So is that's my question about misexpectations. Why would you be expecting CTV to perform like Google, which is more of a last click attribution type of model?
Right. Well, to me, CTV is a full funnel, right? Good advertising, especially advertising that tells a story like video on TV does.
Yeah.
Should drive awareness and knowledge of the brand, which long-term should convert into outcomes, into purchases.
Yeah.
The leads, correct? A few years ago, I built an algorithm pure because this whole idea of it's either brand or it's performance, it's awareness or it's direct response. It can't be both. It's one or the other. It drove me nuts because it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Advertising should do both.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Who just wants to run ads just for quote unquote awareness and not drive sales? They want sales. They want to make money.
Yeah.
So I built an algorithm that ingested a combo of lucid brand lift data and conversion data from the DSP.
Uh-huh.
Both of these data sets went into the algorithm. And then the algorithm would identify the pockets of inventory that drove both high brand lift and direct response performance and start optimizing towards that.
Yeah.
And what we saw was within the first 3-4 weeks, you had a good, strong lift in brand lift and recall. And then within week 5 and 6, that's when the direct response performance really picked up. You had it a bit. The start was ramping up a bit. But then week 5 and 6 and 7, that's when it really kicked into gear.
Yeah.
And then the brand lift also stabilized, but at a very high level.
Yeah.
Right.
So the brand lift was having a halo effect on the direct response response rate.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
and those direct response actions might have happened in a different channel, not necessarily within the CTV channel, right?
Which happened.
You might do a search, you might do some other activity that gets you to some level of conversion at entering.
Right. I generally think that CTV is very much under-attributed by our legacy measurement systems. But in this case, my hypothesis is proven.
Yeah.
Advertising drives both awareness and direct response. You just got to measure it correctly. Right?
No, that's true. Yeah. And I think, we saw that a ton at Newstar when I was at Newstar. And I just interviewed Mike Finnerty, who ran our MMM and MTA practice. And one thing that we had Bank of America, JP Morgan, a lot of the big banks, right? And one thing we saw within those organizations is that 80% of their budget was spent on direct response advertising. So it was the direct mailers, right? Expensive on a per mail piece, but worth it because of the lifetime value of a customer that you converted to like a credit card, for example, right? And so because it was so measurable, household targeted, they fell in love with it, and they would put 70 to 80% of their budgets into just that down funnel channel, right? Direct mail, and they could continue. They could support their argument to upper management that this was working, and they would underestimate the value of upper funnel brand marketing. It could be CTV, it could be linear TV. And so we ran these sort of 10-year models, right? Because it was 10 years worth of data, because we had a long-term relationship with both clients, and found that that the upper funnel, when you had more of a 50-50 split in your media spend between upper funnel and lower funnel, you actually saw a significant increase in lower funnel activity. So it was the halo, whereas if you kept it the 80-20, meaning 20 in brand and 80 in direct response, right?
Tapped out.
And so the halo effect, which to your point is, we're consumers, we're exposed to things, we recall things, we might think like, hey, I'm looking for fill in the blank. And you're going to think about the things that you know, either that or people have recommended them to you, and then you go and you commit an action. But that's brand building, that's brand awareness. And I think your point here is that it's critical, and that CTV has got to be seen as I think it's got to be seen a little bit more like linear television, right? I mean, do you think that?
That's what I say. CTV is still TV. CTV is TV. Linear CTV, the user experience. If I'm watching an ad on the TV, it doesn't matter to me if it's linear or CTV. My brain can't tell.
Yeah,
it's an ad on a big screen.
Yeah, and like, what do you think about? Because one of the things that I've seen, and I was hoping that CTV would not follow the same path, where I thought the ad load challenge with linear television, where when they finally implemented this ads across all stations. So when you wanted to flip, like you're watching a game and you want to go to another station and you're hoping you can see another game, let's say it's like NBA and you're going to MLB, and you're getting commercials all aligned. So I remember when that happened, and I'm like, well, now I am forced to watch commercials, right? Without subscribing to kind of a streaming provider, right? So like, I always felt that the ad loads were too high for my linear television consumption.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm feeling that CTV has just imitated, if not even compounded, that problem, right? And both from a frequency management perspective, I'm getting the same types of ads over and over and over again, right? And from a fact that I think I'm being exposed to more ads on CTV than I am like per hour of watching.
Well, I have some theories on that. Well, one, we love talking about how many people are watching streaming TV these days. The growth, the numbers. Rarely do you see a breakdown between ad tier subscribers and non-ad tier subscribers.
Yeah.
Right? So like when you're seeing those streaming numbers, you have to ask yourself, how many of those actually have ads?
Yeah.
And what I believe is not as many as we would like to think they are.
Yeah.
So ultimately,
the fast channels are not, you're saying they're not quite as well penetrated as the more authenticated subscriber-based ad-based experiences.
Well, I don't think the fast channels have as much viewership as they like to claim.
Yeah.
That's one thing, right? And then two, naturally with the Hulus and the Netflixes of the world, right? People are like, there's going to be a split between people who go in the ad tier and the not ad tier.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you combine the fact that I don't think there's as many people watching these fast channels as the fast channels claim there are.
Yeah.
And then you have a bifurcated paid versus ad tier with the premium CTV publishers. You're gonna need to over deliver on frequency and get more ads in front of people than they might like in order to make some money.
Yeah. Well, and do you think that's a good user experience? I mean, did CTV lived up to its hype, its promise, or do you think we've just fallen into the same over advertised loop? And I know we're in the advertising and tech industry, but there's a balancing act here, right?
The promise of CTV ultimately, I think, was you can select what you want to watch whenever you want to watch. You don't have to abide by a schedule.
Yeah,
right? It's all on demand. So I mean that really with the convenience, right?
Yeah, there's advantages to that.
Convenience,
right?
That was the promise.
Yeah.
What was the ad What was the ad promise for CTV? I mean, it was always going to go in this direction. We were always going to fuck it
up. Yeah.
So question. I mean,
yeah.
Well, we're going to do right by it. Come on.
Yeah. So you're saying that they're not delivering a better experience from an ad delivery perspective, because you're seeing more repetition of ads, right? You're not seeing frequency capping and enforced in a way that you see in linear television. So it's a shittier ad experience.
I mean, there's less transparency, so you can't really optimize. That's correct.
So let's pivot there. So less transparency in measuring outcomes for CTV. Where is that breaking down for advertisers?
Well, the way we like to measure CTV right now, and for many people, is still in the legacy way we measure display online video via web pixel placed on the website.
Yeah.
And what I like to say is CTV is a much different dynamic than online video and display. Yes, it's digital, but I think because we just put the digital name on it, we then apply our legacy thinking and strategies that were applicable to online video and display to CTV, but it's a completely different beast. So, for instance, with a web pixel, with online video and display, right? The impression usually was served on the same device where the conversion occurred.
Yeah.
Right. With some nuance, when the year of mobile kicked in, right? People started converting on mobile, right?
Yeah.
Using their mobile phones more. And the device graphs started coming into play and getting more adoption.
Yeah.
But the device graph was an addition to the measurement, not the primary piece of primary foundation of measurement. With
Yeah.
CTV, where the impression happens on one device and the conversion will happen on a different device, the device graph is the focal point, is the foundation, is the most important piece to measure CTV correctly. Because you can't measure a conversion happening on a computer when the impression was served on the TV without a device graph.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's linking those devices not only to the household but potentially to the individual if you can do that with any level of accuracy. Right. Generally, it's at the household level, right? Yeah.
So, naturally, device graphs, and there's been recent research from TruthSet come out that's shown how inaccurate
we got Scott McKinley on a little bit later.
Oh, good.
This week. Yeah.
Tell Scott.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed.
He was an Olympic cyclist.
Was he now?
Yeah. He was the lead of the Olympic cycling team in it was 1986 or 1992. Yeah. So he is an uber athlete.
Oh, wow.
Just if you didn't know. So the next time you talk, I'll be like, I heard you were a cyclist. He's like, yeah, I was an Olympian. It's pretty impressive.
I feel relatively unaccomplished.
Yeah.
So we put out research recently that shows just how inaccurate the signals that make the linkages between different identifiers within a device graph are.
Yep.
So device graphs are a lot less accurate than we like to think they are.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now you take that into consideration. And now, again, we go back to the pixel. Pixel is placed on the webpage. For a conversion to be counted, the pixel has to fire.
Yeah.
Now, if you're running an ad blocker, which 30 to 40% of the US, based on the research I've seen, does.
Yeah.
Pixel won't fire because it blocks all pixel fires. If you're running a VPN, pixel won't fire.
Yeah. So that takes out your work population in a lot of cases.
Correct.
Percentage of your work.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. If you're converting on Safari or an iOS phone, iOS strips out, Safari strips out first-party cookies after a 7-day window, and then it blocks third-party cookies by default.
Yeah.
So highly likely your conversions, if you're converting on Safari or a mobile or an iPhone, will also not be counted.
Yeah.
By a pixel, not to be captured. That's a shit ton of fucking people.
Yeah.
So you have all these different factors, and then again, if you're on another browser like Safari, like Brave, like Firefox, they block
Firefox
pixels as well.
People still use Firefox. I gave that up years ago.
So the research I saw was 28% of the US uses Safari, 4% use Firefox, 2% use Brave.
2% use Brave, and the rest are Chrome.
And the rest are.
Yeah. Interesting.
Wow. But 50% of the US has an iPhone.
Yeah.
So that's all to say you have all these factors convalescing to make measuring CTV out with the pixel not capturing all coverage. And we saw this at Intermedia, where we were running a campaign for a DTC client, and we picked up, let's just say, 100 conversions for the pixel, 100 sales. Not great at all. But then...
And where were these sales happening? Was this an online e-commerce type of experience? Yeah.
So, and then we decided to match up the IPs from impression exposures to the IPs logged in their CRM, because their CRM matches the IP address of all converters.
Yeah.
Right? While people had to buy something. We match those IP addresses.
Yeah.
It's not 1% accurate by any means type of manual type of attribution. But what we saw was that instead of 100 matched IPs / pixel firing conversions, there were 1,000.
A 10x difference.
10x difference. Significant. And there's the difference between the abject failure of a campaign and a very successful.
Yeah.
So then, I was like, wow, this is worse than I thought. Right. And I dug in to see, try to understand how can it be this bad? Because, I've seen numbers, I've heard numbers that about what the discrepancy could be, but not this bad. And then when I looked into their data deeper, I saw that 60% of all their purchasers were coming from Icon. 60% of everyone buying their product, and they're moving millions a week. In most cases.
Yeah. Yeah. So that applies to just any sort of attribution. It's not just CTV, right? It's any sort of digital interaction.
It applies to a device graph, heavily device graph reliant share. So
yeah.
if we're talking about also audio, applies to audio.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just to finish that up, the solution ultimately here, and there's no perfect solution. We've rolled out a patchwork of solutions. Is you use the browser limitation. You do that matching if you can get the data from both sides. If you can get the log files from your DSP and the IP addresses from the CRM. And then last but not least, run an MMM. So like this client was also running Crescent, which is a MMM partner, like a Triple Whale or House.
Yep.
And CTV crushed it in MMM, and this is almost a near real-time MMM. Right? Like part of this thing that tipped me off was like, we were looking great in the MMM, great ROAS, but the pixels were barely capturing anything. Yeah. So that's what got me to start doing.
Yeah, like oxymoron. And I talked to an MMM, the U.S. president of Mutinex, which is an Australian company that came here, and they report back on, because remember, you're bringing in, it's anonymized data.
Yep.
Generally, yep. Right? It covers a whole bunch. It's marketing mix modeling, so it's covering every seasonality factors, econometrics, any sort of economic impacts that could affect basically impact or outcomes for a particular media channel.
Right.
And they report their data out. It's all anonymized. They report their data out on a monthly basis because they're at the enterprise level. So they deal with enterprises, and they basically claim that they're using this big strategic budget allocation decisions. We're going to take this away from CTV, and the you could make that more frequent, but you're losing sort of fidelity and accuracy on really what's causing the impacts and where the shift should happen. So, I mean, that'll be my MMM question back to you: is real-time MMM? I'm going to call you out. Is that real, or are you making that out? There's
a 3-day lag.
Because I mean, there's test and learn, experimentation, right? Where you can test. You can have a control group. You can have geo blocks, right, where you have off and on, and run small segments. But the question is that going to have the type of insight to impact an entire media plan, right? Be able to go and say, I need to shift $100 million from this channel to this channel, right? That's where I think MMM becomes much more of a predictive, data heavy product, right? Yeah. That's faster than it was, because it used to take 6 months to turn this stuff around. Yeah. 12 months. Now you're getting into these life cycles that are much quicker. It's largely agentic driven versus people driven. But just I thought that was interesting, because you said real time MMM, and I thought
these DTC brands, they live and die by their MMMs.
Yeah,
they make all their decisions ultimately based on what they're doing themselves.
And what do you think the frequency of their media shifts are in terms of budget allocation?
It depends. But I mean,
is it like a quarterly, monthly?
No,
weekly. Yeah, and this is digital channels, obviously, because of commitment. You can't make the changes as quickly. But they'll make incremental changes. Per channel to see how they, and these are direct to consumer.
Yes.
So a lot of it's down funnel, direct marketing. And you're seeing a much shorter sales cycle.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. That's why, for lack of a better word, these near real time MMMs, they work better for these DTCs because, it's much more responsive. The sales are coming in much faster. The time to purchase is much faster oftentimes. So
So what's your thought? And I'll ask you my final question, because I'm on the measurement kick, and we don't cover it enough. And you certainly love to get wonky. Is MTA dead? Do you think multi-touch attribution has a future? Or do you think some of these modern next gen MMM solutions, the Rocker Boxes, the Mutinex, who we just interviewed, and a few of these others, are sort of replacing the need for sort of MTA as we once knew?
Consider this question is not very clean, but it is. I think MTA is very much needed. I think it definitely serves a purpose and has a place. But just the nature of the fragmentation in the industry, how one entity might be willing to share data necessary for an MTA while another will not. Yeah. It makes it impossible at this point. Not impossible, but hard. And long term, it'll only get harder as more and more entities become more and more privacy conscious and lock in their data. So MTAs, as we know, they have a shelf life, and will likely be phased out at some point, just because they'll be
the nature of our walled garden universe, right? Well, hey, thanks, David. This was awesome. Good dinner last night. Great having you. I hope you're enjoying Miami.
Thanks for coming.
I know. No, you're not yeah, we're following up Possible with 4 days of Jazz Fest. So keep
right after Possible,
keeping the drinking to a minimum while Possible.
You didn't tell me it's right after this.
Yeah. You're not following the same rules of engagement.
My liver will not let me.
Yeah, right. Well, thanks for joining us, man. It was a pleasure as always, and thanks everybody. Illinois, coming to you from Possible 2026 in Miami on day 2, and I've got Adam Heimlich, who's joining Signal Illinois for the second time, CEO of Chalice AI. One thing that we talked about, for those that haven't seen the podcast with Adam, with Rio and I, it's certainly worth watching. I think we probably went over an hour, probably an hour and 10. It was a really good technical and interesting conversation. And I think one of the things that we started with, which I think would be good for those that haven't seen the podcast, was your background. I mean, you came from an agency background. You were heavily involved in programmatic. You got sufficiently technical. You talked about how you got technical. You would learn how to build and make some of these products. And then you decided to go independent and form your own company. What was sort of that journey like, and what made you bring Chalice to life with your wife?
Yeah. What Allie Manning, which is my wife and co-founder, and I both realized by 2019 was that the machine learning, predictive modeling that was offered by platforms, as powerful as it was, just wasn't a good fit for big brands. Like, the things they're trying to do are not clicks and completes. They're trying to drive lifetime value and incremental conversions. And they're trying to steal market share. And those signals are not what's being modeled to. It's not what's predicted.
Yeah, there's a short-termism. Right, in sort of digital media.
They're like a flattening. I think now that people are seeing a lot of AI outputs, right, that people call it slop, people are now realizing that average outputs, right, things based on data pools have average output. Creative and a differentiated strategy, your media buying shouldn't be this sort of flat output, like whoever clicks on it or whoever gives us an attributed sound.
It sounds like it's kind of a reach play. It's like the reach dilemma. Like, we want to reach as many people as possible. It seems infinite with digital media. But I think what we're realizing is it may not be, it's much more finite from
a conundrum is that reach media does better. Like, YouTube does well because of its reach, and TV and billboards do well because of the reach, because in a broadcast medium, at least you reach everybody. Whereas if the modeling is wrong, it's actually an autopilot that's steering you away from reach and usually into your own customer base. So we see that over and over.
Yeah, where you're targeting, you're not targeting like sort of the movable middles. You're targeting, right, people that are already customers. Or in digital media, oftentimes your reach might be just slightly fabricated.
That's right.
Right.
Because no one knows, right? They don't have the global reach anyway.
Yeah, it's MFAs, it's inventory, it's IVTs, it's inventory that's not really worth its grain in salt. And so you get this sort of infinite view. We talk to Dr. Fu all the time. He's on the show. And you get this sort of infinite view of reach. And he's saying that it's actually finite. And so one of the conclusions that came up with our podcast was your point about like linear television, like some of this traditional linear reach media is actually proven to, like, the model seems pretty solid by comparison.
At least it's not an autopilot sending you away from where you're going. So that was the core problem. And, we're in year 7 of telling people, like, we could use your own data and model to exactly what you're trying to do and deploy that in programmatic and do things in walled gardens. And
it's about leveraging more of the brand's data, or are you actually combining that with the supply side as well, or is it just purely brand?
It's best data available. So sometimes brands have their own data. In finance, they always have a lot of data, but in CPG, they usually don't. So it's about going out to the panel marketplace. What I wanted to say is that it's only now, 2026, where there's so much pressure to adopt AI, and there's so much more knowledge about automation and AI slop, that our message is really resonating. And we're saying, this is how AI hits brands. It's about using your own data to have an automated version of what you're actually trying to do. That's what agent means. It means it's doing what you want it to do. And a lot of people have this experience of AI as something that you're opted into, that's taking control away from you. And finally, after, here in our 7th year, we're saying you don't have to go that way. And finally brands are saying, now I see my choice. It's either get opted in or I dig into this AI thing and find out what my model looks like.
And do you think that model, and we should talk about your containerized sort of model solution, which is relatively different than most DSPs out there, and that's sort of the kind of the core competency, the value prop that's sort of a unique selling proposition for Chalice. Tell us a little bit about that. But do you think that data, when you talk about leveraging their data, does AI give brands and the sell side as well, publishers, the ability to maximize a greater amount of data to be more effective in terms of the behavioral and intent and engagement signals that they're leveraging during the process?
Absolutely. We talk to publishers every day. As much as I can, we talk to the sell side. And we think that the brand specific models that we're doing are going to be good for publishers. Like we see that the platform way of doing things, right? Everything based on the ID, ignoring the page, ignoring the quality and content of that page, has harmed publishers, right? And
it's publishers' inability to pass all of their data that they're sitting on sort of a treasure trove of audience engagement back to the DSPs, because it creates bandwidth issues and it costs a lot of money to manage that much.
Basically a narrow pipe. The DSPs were built 10 years ago for the most part, and their pipe isn't broad enough to carry every URL and the quality and content of the page.
So they miss signal from the audiences that they're trying to target.
And the fiction is the signal isn't important, and maybe it's not if you don't care about quality or content. But
how about
most brands do.
We're still just as consumers, we're still getting kind of shitty advertising, right? Where you're like,
how about just learning what your customers, even if you optimize to clicks, like you want to know exactly where those clicks are coming from, what the pages have in common,
and what kind of predictive steps led to that outcome, so that you can find more people like that. It's not just your classic lookalike modeling, but it's audience clarity, right? And clear definition and the ability to leverage the data to kind of do the promise that's been there for a long time, like the one-to-one, the real time. And it just never seems to have worked, at least from a consumer perspective. And I think we've seen it in the industry.
We've got it working now. So we have the case studies. The containerized deployment is a way to bring an entire model of the content and quality of the open web into decisioning. That lives in an SSP server. Index Exchange was the first to host it, but now it's a standard called the ARTF, the Agentic Real-Time Framework. It's been adopted by OpenX.
Still lives in this SSP set.
The Assert compute environment. And the Chalice model of the open web is living and containerized inside this environment, responding in a millisecond. So it solves a whole bunch of technical problems of expense, and that narrow pipe problem is completely solved. We have access to the full bid stream.
So that when you stir the ad, you're actually taking full advantage of that.
All the data that's available and upstream, close to the publisher, where there's 250 billion bid requests a day, right? So instead of it being narrowed, we're picking out of that whole stream by page with a lot of knowledge of what's on these pages and how well it scores for the brand, and being able to share this information back. The results are incredible. That's what I'm here at Possible to say. We're seeing savings up to 70%, with results even better. We're getting a steady stream of learning on how to slice things like news to be on the news that's valuable to you.
Which is the critical panel. Luke Pascal talks about that all the time, how news was so ignored because of just polarizing topics, and people are sort of, it's a chisel because the audience is so valuable.
We're taking a scalpel to news. Online video is another great place to take a scalpel. Scalpel, like there's thousands and thousands of sites that show 2 videos at once. Horrible experience, but it passes the viewability and size thresholds of the platform. So being able to filter out the real quality video, it turns out it doesn't even cost more. So that's why we see.
And the real quality video is on the device that you want it to be on. So if you're targeting,
playing alone,
if you're targeting CTV, you want it to be on the television glass.
Before real content, that's a big one. Is it before real content, or is it just playing in a banner? We could slice all that and find that the best video is not more expensive. So brands are getting price cuts as they get better results on their video campaign. And we're excited to show people.
But there's a trend where people say, I'm going to buy, we'll just use CTV as a video example, where people there's kind of a race at the bottom. They're buying cheap inventory thinking it's CTV, but it's actually just almost like fabricated impressions that are being shown across devices, across domains that are being spoofed. So that leads me to this question: is that there is a lot of talk. We talked to Permutive the other day, Joe Root, who you probably know, and great guy, super funny, super smart, lives in New York City, right? An Englishman, and he was talking a lot about this sort of future of, and I wanted to, you guys as a DSP, kind of a newly defined or differently defined DSP, I think. Right, because you kind of live on that SSP side, and you're leveraging both sides of the data ecosystem.
We encourage people to think about it as modularity. Chalice is a modular optimization tech. It could live in a DSP, it could live in an SSP. Over time, those lines get blurred. But we're saying, like in the world that's coming, you're going to be able to take modular pieces and build the stack per campaign.
It's almost like it's aligned with that composable trend
exactly.
that we see. Where you're plugging in wherever it needs to be. So whatever the tsunami shifts in the industry that happen, and so this leads to my question is that his argument is that, it's probably in favor of the primitive business model, is that the closer you get to a direct relationship between publishers, the people that deliver the content, especially premium, because they have the authenticated traffic, and the brand, the better you're going to be. Right. And how that's becoming more of a reality.
Yeah. I mean, that's
in today's world. Whereas are all these middlemen in the tax.
April 2026, that's where we are.
Yeah.
The buy-side tech companies will respond. But right now, it looks like they're really far from the data, the flow, and they haven't built the environments that companies like Chalice need. But I'm sure they're going to come out with their next wave of innovation. I think part of the reason
you've seen that with like the Trade Desk and some with Open Path, and like they're starting to move more towards, because they realize that's where
the action is. So we'll see more. But where we are right now, there's a little more action on the sell side, and I think it's because if you rewind 2 years ago, sell side ad tech was nowhere, and they were in big trouble. So it's that pressure.
And the pressure on the sell side, right? Like, because there's a lot of talk in the industry around, and I won't name the person or the company, but talk about, I was referencing the fact that I was talking to him, and I referenced the fact that we talked, and he's like, but is Chalice and other DSPs like fighting for kind of a shrinking pie of the open internet, of the open web? Right. I won't tell you who it was. You probably could guess, but no. But like, are they? Is the entire future of going to be either authenticated traffic on the premium publisher side, or just behind walled gardens, which I guess authenticated.
I think there's a lot to like about walled gardens for the brands. It's very easy to use. They're trusted. They get a lot of money, and they have great tech. But to the extent that the open web can become easy to use and drive great results, we will compete. I would say, we're talking about buy-side tech and when it's going to come back. Facebook now has a model called Andromeda that scans the creative, any creative you give them, and creates thousands of features about this creative and improves their modeling, right? The more you know about what you're actually serving, the better you can model, right? So where is the open web buy-side equivalent of that? Like, I want 1,000 features on creative for my data science team to be modeling off of. That's going to come out, right? We're going to compete with Facebook in the open web, but it takes a lot of companies, a lot of integrations.
Sort of trying to create parity with the capabilities they're bringing to market. It's like, you have to, we're a capitalist society. You got to compete with them at the level that they're competing, and they're automating this stuff, the entire media buying process.
And they have billions of dollars to invest, and the open web investment pipeline has been a little clogged in the era of duopoly dominance.
But do you think it's hype? Do you think that the whole open web's dying? We're gonna live in a walled garden world? Do you think that that's BS, or do you think there's hope for an increasing and larger size? Let's say it could be premium, but also it could be long tail publishers.
I'm optimistic about competition. The issue is competition. I think the open web thrives largely on big advertisers and big agencies desiring an alternative to Meta and YouTube, one that's data rich and interoperable. I don't think that goes away, even if it does shrink. I think the story of shrinking is overblown. There's been a lot of issues in open web display and video that we're proving can be addressed, and you can drive great results. And when people speak too broadly. I think they should always split the enterprise and small advertiser market. Small advertisers were never big open web display buyers. And the fact that they're going away and the publishers that supported them are going away is not necessarily an important trend.
Yeah, and that's something that the Googles and the Facebooks, in terms of appealing to that long tail. And basically giving them a simple, easy way to do it themselves.
That works pretty well.
They won that a while back, but that wasn't.
They've been winning that.
They've been winning it for a long time, and I think to your point, that you're still trying to attract big advertiser dollars.
Big advertisers and big publishers. We don't need so many publishers. Display publishing inventory has been infinite. And the price that goes down to 50 cents, and and people will miss that market who thrived in it, but it was never very important to big advertisers and premium publishers.
And what is your perspective on speaking of infinite? Because I think you could call that because I do think it's finite versus right in terms of the amount of inventory that's available in the sort of long tail supply side of the world. I mean, do you think that the open web still has kind of a polluted, dirty inventory problem? Right. This is kind of the Dr. Fu.
Let's say a pricing problem, right? There's a lot of 50-cent inventory that people still buy for the reach of to reach to IDs at that 50 cents. But that price should be $0 or a penny, right? Like those impressions are worthless. Yeah. Like
it might be one of the million, recipe sites that's AI generated, right? Where it's not real human content.
If that's all you see, it looks like a crash. Oh my God, the market's crashing. All this 50-cent inventory is being reset to 0. But if you're a news site and suddenly there's a scalpel ability for a big B2B advertiser, tech advertiser to be in the news, reaching engineers like they want to, then your CPM is going from 50 cents to $2 or $3 or $4. And that view doesn't get represented enough. Is like that, proper pricing is double-edged, right? Some things will go to 0 and some things are underpriced right now. I promise you, we're staying massively underpriced quality inventory. And
it's the premium inventory, right? Which is authenticated. You can, if you're going direct to publisher, big publisher, that you're reaching the people that you're intending.
But it's not even all name brand publishers. There are good recipe sites that show clean video and have good layout, and they've never been rewarded for their commitment to having a well laid out page.
It sounds like you're on a mission here. This is a cause, right?
Well, my mission is for advertisers to price things appropriately. We're trying to tell publishers in this world, you can make more money, right? It doesn't have to be shrinking. Like the total inventory could shrink. That just means the money becomes more concentrated with fewer, better publishers.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what do you see? What do you see for like the next couple of years? At Chalice AI, like you guys have you built the company, you ran a consulting gig for a little while. Like I'm sort of in that same founder mode, so I have a ton of respect for that. You launched this organization with your wife, right? You're starting to see some real traction in the ecosystem. You built a pretty unique system that is modular, like you talked about. What do you see in the next 3 to 4 years of Chalice AI?
Well, our technology is increasingly embedded in what we think will be the most important ecosystems, places like Index, OpenX, and PubMatic, AWS, LiveRamp, a really important partner to us, and many companies that we're talking to here we see as distribution points for this really flexible, modular optimization tech, right? Paired with LiveRamp, then you have identity, optimization, conversion data, right? That's something very powerful. Paired with Index, you have rich inventory data, curation capabilities, right? A whole bunch of agency demand. And then our agency partners, right? Agencies are under tremendous pressure to adopt AI and show results. And we're showing that you don't necessarily have to fire your staff. Like another route would be driving much more value for your advertisers, right? If you drive enough value that the agency can get paid and the advertiser realizes gains, AI doesn't have to mean this massive cost cutting, right? You can get the value and the value gain that pays for the people. So we see that as a really important trend in showing the service industry that this wave of tool adoption is a chance to legitimately earn, right, on your expertise and save your jobs.
And it sounds like containerization is like, in a sense, you're building like a memory layer, like a memory system that's capturing more information, more data, more signal across the buy and the sell side that can be leveraged just for more. And at the end of the day, this should drive better outcomes,
absolutely,
right? And measure even incrementality,
like
measurability.
Our client is Hershey. What I tell my client Vinny at Hershey is, we want to have
Vinny. We're talking to him tomorrow.
It's like we want to have, like, we know you make your money. It's it's for Skinny Pop, it's penetrating new households, and for Reese's, it's really getting the 2 a month people to 4 a month. These are super hard things to model. And we're going to have models for you that can be dropped into your walled garden environments and your CTV environments. If you want to work with LiveRamp, it'll be there. And
that allow you that level of accuracy and that level of specificity for that specific type of buyer.
And you'll be right. And you're going to be sending instructions, and you're going to be able to compare. All right, I give my instructions to all these platforms. How did they do? What was the cost to value ratio? And we're saying that's the model that we're going for in the future. Like you cannot adopt AI by going to a few different AI, feudal lords and having them all make their own
frontier
model.
models.
Your model has to sit on your side where your
Yeah.
creative sits. This is your differentiation. And it's per brand, it's per creative, it's per campaign. And you have to start thinking
of true artificial intelligence. I mean, this is where,
what makes it AI is it's an extension of your brand strategy, right? This is automating what the brand is trying to do. And if someone says they have an agent and it's automating something you didn't choose, well, that's not your agent. Your agent is going to do exactly what Skinny Pop needs to do.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're trying to build for you. And you should tell the platforms, like, you could call it AI or call it agent, but I already have models that are designed to lift sales, penetrate households, improve lifetime value, optimize my entire chocolate portfolio. Like, platforms don't do that sort of work.
Yep. Well, this was great. You heard it here first from Adam Heimlich. Thank you for joining us. This is awesome.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll have you on another lengthy episode, but this was great. Thanks everybody for joining us.
This is Possible event in Miami, day number 2, and I'm here with Anna from Black & Decker. Anna, so nice to
Guys, thank you so much for having me. It's very exciting to be here.
probably Possible last year, wasn't it?
Yes, that's when we met in real life after having met at the ANA committee, martech committee.
There's no substitute for in real life, I don't think.
Totally.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Yeah. And being in Miami is not too shabby either. So
No, not at all. This view is amazing.
it is. So I was excited to get you on the pod because you're just a wealth of knowledge. Like, you've been working in martech for a long time. You're super deep in data. I know you've been doing a lot of really interesting things with AI. So maybe we can start out by just tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and your background. I think that'd be really cool.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me. So I'm Ana Mourão, and I actually started my career as a digital marketing manager. Actually evolved into analytics, measurement. I always really liked that we could measure things in digital marketing. And then I ended up going into martech, right? And some years ago, I was actually hired to implement a martech stack to collect and activate end user data. And that's how I got really deep into martech. And that's how I end up actually creating my own framework to help other marketers do the most out of martech and AI as well.
martech can be incredibly confusing, right? I mean, we've all, like, I know that you follow Scott Brinker and, Chief martech and all the stuff they've been doing. It's gone from like 5,000, 10,000 to there's so many martech things.
Yes.
And then, this is an advertising event. I think when you fold in all that's going on in ad tech, it's incredibly complex and bewildering. And I mean, I don't blame marketers. The fact that it's, the fact they are confused, it's totally understandable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's very confusing. I think it's hard to know where to start, right? So I think a lot of marketers receive that directive of making the most out of technology, making the most out of AI, but without a lot of guidance. So a lot of marketers have to find their way around these technologies, around these platforms, both in martech and ad tech, to make sure that they're making the most out of those technologies on behalf of their companies and also on behalf of their own careers, right? Because you are exposed to new technology, you learn new things, and you can evolve as well as a marketer. But it takes effort, right? It's not easy. And what I would recommend is that marketers really lean into the conversations inside their companies. Go talk to your IT, go understand how zero and first party data gets into your martech, where it goes in there, how it can be activated. Right? I think having that foundational knowledge can really help when marketers are discussing with other teams, with vendors, helping select new platforms. If you have that view of how the data is and what you need to do with it and the challenges around collecting, unifying, activating, then you have a better idea of what is needed. That at least is my experience.
You mentioned activation. I think this ties to an important point. And I've always been a little puzzled by this. You have the world of martech, which is, it's a big, complex world. It's very well established. There's a lot of thought leadership. And then you've got a separate world of ad tech, right? I don't think there's too much cross-pollination or even overlap, to be honest, where I find a lot of people in ad tech, they almost scoff and say, oh, we don't need to know martech, right? And people in martech are saying, well, ad tech, that's just DSPs. And not realizing, okay, so there's DSPs, there's ad exchanges, there's SSPs, there's clean rooms, which are kind of between martech and ad tech. There's different measurement devices. It's incredibly complex. There are thousands of ad tech tools. We have our own ad tech framework that is there's some overlap with martech, but not as much as you think. But I think those two worlds are starting to get closer together. So I guess the question I have is, like, what do you see in terms of the two worlds? I don't know if they're converging, but at least becoming more linked. Is that something you're seeing?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I think they're becoming more linked. There's more overlap, but in a very positive way, right? Because companies could and should leverage their own zero and first party data to make the most of their media buy, for instance, or understand the overlap of their own audience and the audience in other publications, media platforms. So I think that the separation actually it's in a way artificial, right? Because there's always been overlap. Advertising is part of marketing. So this separation was more towards, I think that the technology ended up siloing a little more, but it shouldn't, right? And I think it's very positive to be in an event like this, possible where you see both advertising and martech and very in-depth discussions of AI in both advertising and marketing in general and where they overlap. So I think that's a very good first step.
I think that's a good point. Like, possible, is it an event where you can see both worlds? And I think that there aren't too many of those. Can is, I think, the same, but this is probably the only other one where I've seen, like, all of the martech people I know were all here, and all the advertising, and and possible even, like, there's more agency people here and more brands. I mean, I've seen a lot of brand marketers and brand marketing technologists. It's a cool evolution here.
Oh, absolutely. And the event has been evolving, right? So this year you see some tracks and some stages that you didn't see last year. So I think the event is also being very smart in evolving with its audience. So I see that conversions growing into the future for this event and maybe others as well.
I think another reason why martech and adtech have kind of stayed different is, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I mean, some brands have in-house even media buying, but that's pretty rare, right? I think, especially for big global brands, they're going to continue to work with agencies for a lot of reasons. But I think that that's part of the reason is that adtech is executed. In many of the contracts even sit with agencies. So I think that's kind of led to this division that, I mean, I agree with you. I'm starting to see, and maybe, first party data is that kind of bridge between the two. I mean, thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Yes. That's at least my experience is through the zero and first party data, right? So let's make the most out of our paid media budget by making sure that we start by telling the platform or the media company, okay, we want to find people like this, but not exactly these because they already are with us. So this helps us then go and expand that audience, but making sure that we also improve our cost per acquisition, for instance. So when we first started using our zero and first party data, that's the first benefit we saw.
Targeting, so you're able to like better target people who, not you're saying you suppressed your existing customers.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay, so these are like targeting people who look like your existing customers. I bet with all that incredible first party data you have, where lifetime value, you have purchase history. So I bet you can really get granular and like hyper targeted in terms of building those audiences.
Oh, absolutely. And then you can find like the most engaged or the most valuable customers you have, the ones that convert the most, and say, okay, I want to start with those, right? So you don't have to give everybody together in order to do good segmentation. You can also segment your first party data first and then go after those specific audiences. And that's really powerful because it really creates the foundation upon which we can then add more on top, right? So we start with the first party data and then we say, now I also want people who are interested in this and that, but there's an overlap with the first party data. So it's really helpful. And I think it's also very helpful for retail media as well.
That you led me to my next question. So which, like, looking at activation, like which channels, like for this, like using lookalikes for suppression and using first party data for suppression and lookalikes, like what channels for activation have you had the most success? And it sounds like retail media is one of them, but are you doing any open web? Like if you could elaborate on that, that would be amazing.
So through my experience overall, I've seen more success with retail media and in social media platforms, right? But that could also be replicated in open web, in other DSPs throughout the whole ecosystem, I believe.
And like, how does that work? I mean, I'm assuming you work with an agency that does the media buys, or do you do that in house?
For some of those experiences, we did the buying house, right? But could also work with an agency, because when we leverage the first party data, the way we do it is we send it very much encrypted, right? Very safely to the platform itself. And then the agency can see the counts, but cannot see the PII, right? So it's super safe.
Got it. So you're either uploading to some secure method, whether it's a clean room or something else.
Exactly.
Okay. And then is it coming straight from do you have I don't know if you have a CDP or CRM, how's that data typically, like, where's the source data coming from typically?
So I have experience with coming from the CDP and coming from the customer engagement platform. So whichever one,
Braze or something like that.
Exactly. So whichever one would work, right? So it's not that you have to have a CDP or have to have a data warehouse. No, you can start with what you have on your CRM, on your SAP, and go from there. And you can start with a small proof of concept, see how it goes, and then scale from there. That's also my approach.
I think it's a good point about CDPs. I mean, like a CDP, I look at it more of like, okay, almost a constellation of capabilities involving first-party data, segmentation, some have analytics, activation that could be in a CDP or it could be in a cloud data warehouse plus something else. So I don't think I think like the CDP world, it seems to be more of a consensus that it's not a one-size-fits-all model anymore.
Not at all. Not at all. And I agree with your assessment, one of your articles where you said that really the CDP category is being deconstructed, and it is. I agree with you. And I think there's a lot of overlap with other platforms as well. That's why I mentioned that it's important for marketers and other stakeholders to understand what they need to do. And then they go find the technology, right? Because it's not one size fits all. It may be that you don't need this one technology. What you need actually, it's a mix, or you need a best of breed approach, and you are going to supplement with something that you create inside the company, right? So it needs to be very well thought of so that you get the most out of it.
How do you, like, when you're looking at different vendors, let's say you're looking at a category, like do you have any tips or best practices for other, let's say, marketers who are not as deep as you in martech or maybe coming from the ad tech side, like any tips or tricks, like how you approach these categories? Like, let's say you wanted to go solve first party data problems and you're maybe looking at a CDP, any like best practices you can share?
Sure. So in our case, what happened was that we understood that we were collecting the data, but when we went back to our business stakeholders, to our senior leadership, they asked, okay, so how about the data over time? And we didn't have the CDP back then. And we're like, okay, no data over time. We cannot do that. So we realized that actually it was not about having the data only. It was about collecting data over time so that we could have a clear picture over time. Right? So that's what led us to say, okay, so we need a platform that gives that capability to us. And most of the questions we were getting were marketing related. So we were not going to look for a database that could not help marketers.
Sure.
Right? So that's how we got to then the CDP. That was years ago. But those are the questions that I think need to be discussed before you get to, it's this acronym or that acronym.
Just really focusing, okay, what problems do we want to solve?
Exactly.
And then like what capabilities or use cases can we identify that would potentially address those and kind of finding best fit, right?
Yes.
Based on that and other factors too.
That's exactly it.
Okay. The role of procurement in, like, I think for marketing, like all of marketing, especially for advertising, has been, it comes up a lot these days, like people complain about procurement, they're just evaluating based on it's everything's cost and let's say on paid media, it's all CPMs with major pubs. I think in martech too, a lot of it is looking myopically on, okay, like on not understanding the total cost of ownership, more just okay, but what is the per seat license or what's this? And I think missing the forest for the trees and making those decisions. Like, any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. That happens a lot, unfortunately. And I think one of the ways to counter this with procurement is to bring any impacts on the operations, marketing operations, right? Because you may go to procurement and say, okay, so this one is cheaper in the cost per email address that I have, let's say, but this one will increase our time to market because it does not solve this specific issue for us, or it may increase our dependency on external vendors. So that it should also be taken into consideration. So I think that's an opportunity, again, for marketers to go and make sure that they explain the effects that those technologies also have on their day-to-day, and opportunities for efficiency and efficacy.
like that a lot. Turning to AI for a second, like, what are you seeing as like a marketing technologist? What are you seeing that's, because there's a lot of just, I mean, there's a gazillion startups, right?
Oh,
So,
yes.
you know, and they all have incredible pitches. Well, some better than others, let's say. But I just think it's even more bewildering. But like looking through all of this, like what do you think is real, and what's getting you excited that's actually happening in AI right now from a marketing technology perspective?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think there is a lot of opportunities for marketing to improve in two ways, right? So one is on the operation. So how can we be more effective, more efficient, right? How can we, with the same team, produce more? Because there's a lot of demand for that nowadays. And the other side, of course, is how we communicate to the customer, to your end user, to your public, and you make the most out of it. You increase engagement, you increase conversion, right? So there are those two areas, and there are many benefits on both. And I think the AI decisioning is a big one, right? So it's different from what we had in the past, where we would say, okay, if this, then that. Now you can give AI decisioning the objective, and the AI itself will figure out how to get there. Of course, you need to put guardrails in place, and goes without saying that you should have the data in place, because otherwise the AI won't be able to really get to the objective if the data does not allow it to see how to get to that objective to begin with, right? So I see an opportunity here, first of all, for the teams that have already been working on organizing their customer data. So good for you. And second, on the ones that have not, to really get ahead of it so that you can make the most out of AI, and then it can also be scalable. Because otherwise, yes, you can get gains, but then you cannot scale, right? In a big company, well, that won't take you that far. So those are, and avoid FOMO, right? There will be a lot of FOMO. So no FOMO, just go back to the basics, to everything we were just describing here, and then you go and check the opportunity that AI can have for your objectives.
Yeah, those are real. That's really good advice. And then I guess looking at like next couple days, I mean, I know we're halfway through. Like, are there any sessions you're excited about? Or are there any like, what are you really looking forward to in this event? What are you hoping to get out of it?
So I'm really happy to be meeting other brand side marketers. I like to meet my peers. Yes. And I'm trying to like meet them, talk to them, because it's amazing to benchmark with my peers. That's awesome. And also a lot of discussions about AI and the future of marketing work. Right. So those are some that I'm also looking forward to understand how other companies are seeing that playing out for them and how they are working around it. I think it's actually on my mind as well, and I think it's on a lot of marketers' minds as well.
Well, it's impressive. They've done a really good job incenting brands to come here. I've noticed that.
Yes.
And you know, this year, I mean, I'm with Omnicom, and like I've noticed more big agency people. I mean, like 2 years ago, there are very few. So it's been a nice evolution to see that. And the conference has gotten bigger. I mean, I think it was 6,000 last year. It's going to be, it's certainly bigger than that this year. I mean, it was a mob seat down in the kind of reception area there by that bar. But I'm looking forward to the next couple of days. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm sure we'll run into each other. We usually do, and I really appreciate you coming on the pod to talk about this. And we definitely need to get you on for a longer, like, how we like those 60 to 90-minute discussions. We're really going to depth. We'd love to get you back on for one of those in the near future, Anna.
Of course.
And thanks again for coming. And
thank you for having me.
From a nice, beautiful overlook of Miami at Possible 2026, Mike Finnerty, the newly anointed U.S. president of Mutinex, right, which is a kind of a next generation MMM or media mix modeling, marketing mix modeling, however you want to call it, company. Congratulations on the new job. And for those that don't know, Mike and I go way back. We were at Neustar together for quite a few years.
Dating ourselves now.
Yeah, we're dating ourselves before the TransUnion acquisition. So are you enjoying the show so far, if possible?
It's been great. I think AI is a topic in everybody's talk track these days, and we're taking a very aggressive approach of leveraging AI to essentially bring MMM into the current it was always supposed to bring to brands.
Yeah, and one thing that we saw, and certainly, and you ran, a team of 200 people, 200 consultants running the MMM practice at Neustar Marketing Solutions for a number of years, and that was post market share. right? Market share was purchased by
Neustar.
Neustar,
Yeah.
right? And so you've seen a very kind of FTE driven model, consultant driven model. There's companies like Analytic Partners out there that also have, which it's very managed services driven.
Yep.
It sounds like what Mutinex is doing, which, relatively new to the US market.
Yep.
You're kind of helping spearhead it, is something different when it comes to how MMM analytics and strategy is actually delivered.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would say that a few things unstructured, and then we can dive into each of the pieces. I think we're seeing right now a focus on measurement and specifically like tying marketing investments to incremental growth for any marketer, like the business.
Incrementality has been a topic for a long time.
It's been a topic and it's elusive, right? It's very hard to do at scale and with the right speed to actually inform the decisions that a business needs to make.
Yeah. And
so,
that's the key point. The speed in terms of how do you actually make switches to your budget allocation, your media allocation, even your creative. And there's been a promise, but it just hasn't actually been delivered upon.
The MMM has long had the moniker of great but late.
Yeah.
Right. It is holistic. It's definitely a marketing mix, meaning we're looking at
and econometrics, right? It's a lot of these kind of exogenous external factors that
anything that
impact the path to purchase or the consumer behavior.
Anything drive up or down demand for a business, we want to be able to articulate somehow in the model.
Yeah.
It helps us better articulate what marketing versus pricing is doing.
Yeah.
And it helps us forecast out, right? Because ultimately you want to use this to make decisions about next campaign, next quarter, next budget.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to tie it to predictions of what ultimately the top line of the business is going to look like.
Yeah.
And you have to be accurate, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to articulate again what those drivers are.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of kind of younger companies like Rockerbox that was bought by DV, right? That have come out saying that they do MMM. You've got the kind of traditional players like the IRIs, the Neustar, TransUnion, although they're sort of seemingly exiting that business. You got the Analytic Partners. I mean, how do you see this landscape, and where do you see do you see some of it being disrupted and being taken over by approaches that are more agent and AI driven?
So I think there's generally two camps in the MMM space. I think the probably most well known are your consultancies.
Yep.
Right. And that is your Analytic Partners, Ipsos MMA, Econometrics, Game Theory.
Game Theory. Yeah.
And those are typically the players you'll see in the Forrester Wave or the Gartner.
Yeah.
It's a people.
Econometrics is out of Europe, right? They're out of France.
Yeah. European. That is what I've spent my career doing, right?
Yeah.
It's a very people-heavy delivery model.
Yeah.
And so takes a lot of time. It's generally pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And it's slow.
Yeah.
Right. But
these are typically like 6, even 12 months. Because MMM has always been known for these sort of long,
pretty long lag.
And then you use it for kind of the usually annual planning cycles, right? Versus quarterly planning cycles.
And that herein lies the challenge, right?
Yeah.
With the way that the ecosystem is moving, you need to get really granular because no one plans video anymore. You're talking down at publishers. You're talking about ad formats.
Yeah.
You're talking about audiences, right? So you have to get the analysis down to a level to actually inform decisioning. And
the media buying decision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it has to get granular.
Like we're talking about video can be fast. It could be CTV. It could be even social video.
Down to like, are you running on Peacock? Like where
very specific publishers.
Exactly. So you have it needs to be granular enough to fit in and fuel decision making to the actual teams that plan and execute.
Yeah.
And it's got to be recent because performance culture, buying behavior is incredibly fluid.
Yeah.
Right. And so results from 6 months ago are not all that actionable anymore. And so
it's kind of like your old batch data systems, right? Where it's you get batch data to train a model, but it's outdated literally the minute it gets exported. Right. And so it's not able to make decisions that are being impacted. It could be an economic shift. It could be a seasonality shift. It could be a consumer behavior trend or a competitive pressure.
If you want to be proactive and take advantage of those trends, right? Use marketing as a growth driver of your business.
Yeah.
You can't be looking at 6 month old or stale data, right?
Yeah.
So to bring it back, we have consultancy approach on one side.
Yep.
You also see like Rockerbox is one of what I would say a group of more SaaS or product driven, call it MMM capabilities. And generally speaking, they have a few problems. And so none of them have really been able to scale into the market all that well. Number one, they generally don't solve the data problem. They're not making it any easier or building tooling to solve the fact that you have to bring 30, 40, 50 different data sets together and you have to normalize it so that like a back to school campaign is labeled the same in all 30 of those data sets, right?
Yeah. And you've lived this existence for a number of years, and
taxonomy and labeling.
Spent a lot of like sleepless nights.
It is
working through data unification and normalization across multiple data sets and warehouses. GM was a good example I always bring up at Newstar, remember?
It was one of the biggest, it still is, one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
Is to normalize these data sets from all of these different platforms, all these different campaigns.
Yeah. And sometimes the brands don't even know where all this stuff is.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to ask a room full of brands who has a consistent, up-to-date and normalized taxonomy across all their executions, very few hands are going to go up.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially the bigger brands that have multiple sub-brands under them.
Right.
Right.
Different teams. There's a variety of reasons why it doesn't exist, or if it existed, it's not maintained well. And so, generally speaking, that's a problem in our mind. You have to make data easy. Otherwise you're not going to get it consistently and you're not going to get it fast enough.
Yeah.
So we're definitely tackling the data problem head on.
Yeah.
We can go into kind of,
and that's distinguishing from some of these other players that don't really, they'll plug on top of it, but you better hope that you're
I don't think of bringing
data organizational level.
Yeah. In my mind, you're not going to get scale and you're not going to get the speed of update and insight if you're not solving the data problem.
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you guys solve the data problem? We talked a little bit about beforehand about semantic layers, right? And how do you interpret the data that's underneath it, right? Unstructured and otherwise, right? And then the agentic layer on top of that, that's got the sort of instruction booklet, right? So how are you guys thinking about it?
So I would think of it this way. There's three things that any data analyst team in a traditional sense needs to understand to bring this all together. You need to understand the media ecosystem and how data resides in your Google platforms, in Meta and TikTok across, or your DSPs, right?
Yeah.
There's a language to how that data manifests, and you need to understand it to be able to bring it together and normalize it.
Yeah.
You need to understand the brand, right? How do their internal taxonomies look? What are they doing? What are their strategies? How do they orient their sales data? What are the different P&Ls that you have to report by, right? So you have a center of gravity with marketing data, center of gravity with the ecosystem, and then you have to know the models, right? You have to know the MMM construct. How are you actually building different variables, right? How do you want to structure the analysis? And so just like you would train a team across those three kind of centers of gravity, we've trained an agentic workforce. Yeah. So we have the first industry-leading end-to-end MMM agentic workforce that will bring the data together, normalize it.
And it's almost skills that are we're typically filled by teams.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we train it the same way. It has the same guardrails, the same expectations. Here's what to do. This looks good. This looks bad. Right. And those are skills and processes now that we continue to develop and iterate, because instead of one data team being on 4 or 5 clients, which is typically how a consultancy would work, our data agents are learning from everybody all the time across the entire business. Yeah. Right. So the ability to actually learn and fuel kind of the IP sitting behind these agentic workforces is an incredible. Yeah. And
it gives the non-technical users, you don't have to have a team of data scientists or analytics leaders, right? Conversational interface. Is that so they can ask questions, get immediate insights from.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So there's three, like broadly speaking, there's 3 parts of the agentic workforce. The data, which is the necessary evil, right? Again, you have to get the data right. 2 is the data science team that are actually building, tuning, and deploying the models. Yeah. And then the last is the MMM analyst pool. Yeah. Again, agentic analyst pool.
With names.
With names. You gotta
personifize. Yeah,
exactly. That know how to essentially translate business questions, like what should my upper funnel strategy be next quarter and why? Yeah. You can ask it conversationally and it'll come back, pull the analysis. It knows how to look at response curves. It knows how to pull contributions, ROIs, marginal ROIs, and it'll come back with a perfectly formulated plan with recommendations, summary for a layperson, right? Yeah. Someone on the media team, someone in finance, someone that doesn't have a PhD in MMM or advanced econometrics. And you don't have to go through a translation layer anymore. Right. Yeah. You don't have to be bottlenecked by, hey, send an email to the team. And guess what? That team is going to have to either deprioritize getting the most recent data updated or answering these 15 questions. Yeah. Right. You can just get all the questions answered essentially in less than 3 minutes. That's our benchmark. Yeah. And we've seen it be a huge unlock for non-technical stakeholders in our organizations.
Yeah. How long does it take to build this? Because you make it sound easy and wonderful, but I've seen some of the hard work that goes behind. It's bug testing and fixing and testing.
It's always easier said than done. Yeah. So the company was founded in earnest in around 2021. Okay. Which was, and I think a lot of the precursors to a lot of the agentic workflows is something like Elasticsearch.
Yep.
And it was founded architecturally to essentially be agentically driven.
Yep.
And so
so it's a native AI,
a native AI platform.
Yeah. Which is different than bolting on AI to try to replatform a SaaS platform.
Yeah, we've been able to run incredibly fast.
Yeah.
Because we were essentially oriented to this agentic workforce from the get-go, as opposed to having to like transition from like super bespoke custom work. Like everything is built to work together. Which just means, generally speaking, it's higher quality, it's faster, and it's battle tested.
Yeah.
Right. We have
do the models auto optimize? I mean, you know, because models are doing kind of weighting of different things that are going into the models, right? From a prediction.
We're updating, running with over 100 brands at this point, all of which are updating at least monthly.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of, hey, I have data from six months ago, or sometimes even later, we're producing every single month, latest and greatest update with coefficients re-estimated to capture all of the latest trends that are occurring in any business.
Yeah. Is there a reason for a month specifically? Is that a statistically significant sample of data?
It's twofold. I think we're always trying to push it faster, right?
Yeah.
There is an intent to go faster and faster.
Yeah.
Monthly has been the cadence that I think feels most natural right now.
Yeah.
For a lot of brands in terms of like the decisions and the cycle times that they have to go through.
Considering they're could be making relatively big shifts in budget allocation
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to be doing that on a weekly or a daily basis, but you're going to be doing that multiple times a quarter.
Yeah. And I think the monthly level still gives us a very holistic view of the business, where you have a number of weeks that you can essentially look at performance up and down. And so it's a meaningful chunk of data.
Yeah.
I think fast forwarding, what you're going to start to see, and this is something we're kind of looking into on a bunch of fronts, is less about increasing the cadence of the analysis and more about plugging the analysis into other systems that are decisioning much faster.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you start to inform DSP strategy? How do you start to inform all of the auto campaign?
And when you had a certain level of confidence or whatever, where the model's saying, hey, this output is at X threshold, right?
Yeah. Right.
Go and you can push a decision in a DSP from a media buying perspective. That makes sense, right? Because why wait until you don't need 99% when 96% might do the job?
All you need to do is make a better decision than you would have otherwise. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the
And you know, when we were at Newstar, we talked. There was a lot of talk about multi-touch distribution.
Yep.
You kind of came from that space, right?
Yep.
There was sort of the growth of what they called granular MMM or hypergranular MMM.
Hypergranular,
yeah. Which was, to me, seemed like a positioning play, but it was like, how do you take MMM and adjust it to be more agile, faster to deploy and deliver, and closer, maybe not multi-touch attribution, but closer to just decisioning speed. Like, how are you seeing that world now? And what is the future of MTA? And does it live in this model?
I think, so generally speaking, and this is coming from a few different forces that are essentially pulling apart what the promise of MTA kind of always was.
Yeah.
Like the quality of identity data, especially when you start to look cross-platform, and the ability to look at a user level and tie a whole bunch of range of experiences and interactions together.
Yep.
Now look at AI, right? There's always a new platform that you're missing or need to integrate. I think we've taken the approach that, generally speaking, there's a lot of interesting, valuable data, but right now it largely resides in platform owned and operated clean rooms.
Yep.
Like the Google clean room or the Meta clean room, right? So you can get to things like reach, frequency, audience optimizations within those environments. Doing it cross-platform, the juice just isn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah,
and we've taken the approach of,
so does the fidelity of sort of granular attribution sort of decreases? Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah, I think
because it's buried behind, at a certain point, it's buried behind a walled garden somewhere.
Correct. Whereas we're taking the approach of coming down to the levels that you need to execute from MMM, which is all aggregate data. It's benign, so to speak, right? You're not dealing with anything that is user level.
Yeah.
So it gives you a much more holistic cross-platform view of what's driving performance. It's much easier to incorporate new and emerging channels, like any sort of paid experiences behind a GPT, right?
Yep.
And so we're able to just move much faster, and we're able to get more relevant insights out, even at a pretty granular level. Like we have creatives, formats, publishers, audiences built into the model. And so by and large, you really don't need to go through the time and effort of standing up like a cross-platform MTA like capability, because you can get it from MMM much faster.
So MTA is dead then.
Dying.
They've been saying that for years, and it seemed like a counter-position play by some providers that didn't have MTA solutions. That's what we thought about it. That were saying, hey, we've got MMM, we're going to position what we had and kind of, kind of poo-poo this other solution, but you're saying that like everything seems to be converging.
Everything's converging. I think you have MMM really as the tried and true, like cross-platform, holistic, incremental impact kind of growth engine for a marketer, and that's really where we're focused. I still think there's a lot of value in user level analysis. I think it's largely.
And is that like test and learn and experimentation?
Yeah, you can do audience level experimentation. You can
control off and on,
synthetic controls for different populations. Yeah, I think there's.
And do you guys help support some of that, or is it?
We take, to by and large, it's a two-way street with our MMM capability. We take test results in as an informative prior, meaning it helps calibrate the model in areas, because testing is a very rich source of causal impact. And then on the way out, every time our model updates, it actually recommends based on areas we might see uncertainty or things that are relatively new to the plan. It actually will recommend and pump out a test design that the brand and their agency partners can take and put into market. So we ingest it to help make the models stronger, more calibrated based on in-market experimentation, and then to recommend areas where testing would help shore up and bolster the analysis.
So one, before we finish, one area that I thought would be fun to cover was, another bane of our existence is dealing with the analyst vendor ranking reports, like the MMOS wave, which was by Forrester, which was their measurement vendor ranking, and we just did a podcast on the CDP Gartner Magic Quadrant, right? And generally similar to what we experienced on the measurement side, on the CDP side, it completely missed the sort of mid and long tail of CDPs, right? It had, Salesforce and some of these big players, Oracle, in places that most of the industry was kind of up in arms going, well, this doesn't really reflect what's happening in this industry right now, right? There was kind of an agentic play. There was sort of a traditional SaaS play, and there's a bifurcation in the market. How do you think the Forresters of the world, are they still doing the MMOS wave?
So they are. There was one, both Gartner, they put out a Magic Quadrant, and Forrester put out an MMOS wave. I think largely it's still focused on what I would call like the legacy or the more incumbent.
So they haven't quite adapted to.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of the newer players that are approaching it differently than your legacy consulting model, essentially. I think that'll change, to be honest, because right now we're seeing a ton of engagement from the market, and we're growing to the point where we're going to have to be on the wave, like one way or the other. Which is good.
Yeah. And it's important. I mean, you mentioned that being important, especially in this space, being considered in that top 5 from a vendor selection perspective for our RFPs is still a critical play. I mean, despite, and we talked about this on the pod yesterday about how, RFPs can oftentimes be largely unsuccessful. Like there's like an average industry rate. I don't know if this is for MMM specifically, but about 10% hit rate. Reading meaning like you'll fill out, 10 maybe.
For Mutinex, the team has done an incredible job really scaling out, and we are the predominant player in the Australia and broader APAC market. So I think it's an interesting journey for us now, taking a tried and true enterprise grade AI workforce essentially to deliver and deploy and bring MMM to life. And we're really just transplanting it and growing it within the US and more essentially across the globe. So.
And it seems like it'll have potentially a disruptive impact on the market, from what I know of all the vendors in the space and what you know.
I think marketers need to reassess their expectations around how fast the economics around what MMM needs to be, right? The bar is much lower with an agentic workforce in terms of just cost, and then to the relevance and speed that they can get insights and drive better decision-making across their organization.
The time to value, that's a big play. Well, hey, thank you, Mike, for joining us. I mean, that was awesome. It's always good to walk out, and it's a topic that we sort of skirt around. I've certainly had experience, but we don't really dive deep. And so we should have you on a full podcast session to keep going further into sort of the MMM world.
Measurements having a moment. I would love to.
It's a moment that I've been involved in for years. But thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Rio Longacre here, Signal and Noise, and we are at Possible event in Miami, and we are kind of midway through day number 2. Another beautiful day here in Miami Beach, and a special guest is Andrea Kotsatos, CRO at Aquifer. Welcome.
How's it going, Rio?
It's going real well.
Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. I know we talked about doing this for a while, and I hope we can make it happen at Possible. So maybe for people who don't know you and don't know Aquifer, maybe start off by telling the guests a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually fairly new to Aquifer. I got here in October of last year, and I spent most of my career on the DSP side of the business. So, way back when at Value Click Media, which became Epsilon and had all sorts of stuff there. And then Rocket Fuel pre-IPO all the way into the seismic years, saw the DMP, ad server, the Pure 39 data business, all sorts of different things within the market. And then more recently, right before the pandemic, I went to Beeswax, helped grow out kind of the tech and media vertical and then the agency vertical. And then after we got acquired by FreeRoll, I ran sales there, did the FreeRoll identity.
I work with Joe Luxnari and all those guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Small world.
Yeah, Joe is my counterpart on the brand side. Of course, I learned a ton from Ari and
Mr. AdTech himself. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was fun. FreeRoll was fun because it was my first exposure to the supply side. Everything I'd done, I touched CTV along the way, but just to be at the epicenter of streaming was fun. Spent a little time as a first. Hired a new CEO. I was brought in as CRO, and we're really chugging along, which is a lot of fun.
I think your new CEO is actually out in Denver. We're going to try to get together over the next few weeks. Schedules haven't aligned, but looking forward to that.
Yeah. Bill and I are both pandemic escapees from New York. So, we tell people we're there because we're there so much, but, he's in Denver and I'm now in Philadelphia.
Funny, I still have a 917 number, despite I've been in Denver. It was pre-pandemic. I went out. It's been about 10 years.
Yeah.
Kind of the first wave of, my wife is from Denver, which is how I ended up out there. But first wave of kind of people from the East Coast going there. But definitely a lot of us now have escaped New York and, go to Denver for the mountains and the lifestyle. But yeah, it's a good place. But
so I'm a millennial and I tell people, for most folks who are millennials, you can tell where people lived at the end of college when they got off their parents' cell phone plan because their area code
is too funny
from that location. And, I'm from Boston and I'll see a 617. I'll be like, oh, you're from Boston. It's like, no, I was just there when I got my cell phone now. Now it's like your social security number. It follows you.
We'd never want to get rid of that, right? Yeah.
Right.
Well, it won't hold it against you from Boston, being a New York sports fan.
Yeah, exactly.
But I did go to school in New England, so in the belly of the beast. But I think a lot of people like Aquifer, works with some incredible companies, including lots of the agencies and the big holdcos. But I think a lot of people maybe because you work behind the scenes, don't know what Aquifer does. So maybe you can spend a moment or two telling viewers about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Aquifer has actually been around for a while. It's a 7-year-old company. And at a high level, what we are is a marketing data engine for adtech and martech. I was initially founded by the CTO of Yahoo and the chief data officer of AOL. Serial entrepreneurs, senior people have been in the space forever. And they found that they kept solving the same data problems for everyone in adtech, martech. And they said, what if we could find a single piece of technology that could solve those problems? Because it doesn't matter whether you are a data company or you are a publisher or you are an agency holding company or you're a DSP or an SSP, you all have the same problems. And so what they built is Aquifer Fusion. And what Aquifer Fusion effectively does is it allows folks to deploy new features that are better, up to 10 times sooner, 20 times faster, and at half the cost.
Cuts down on cloud compute costs a lot, right?
Yeah. And that's a big kind of helpful component. And actually, we've kind of decoupled the cloud piece from the rest of the stack because the Aquifer of a few years ago, we ran everything. We happened to be an AWS shop. We ran everything on AWS on our instance. But over time, a lot of our clients, because it's completely private label, right? One of the reasons why you don't know us is that everything we have in market, 60 different companies in market, we are the tag that powers them, for instance, right? And one of the reasons why you don't know is that we actually deploy in their cloud instance. And once we started doing that, we said, well, we don't only have to work on our own ad tech big data stuff. We could do any job that saves some money on cloud computing.
We were talking before this, the term zero copy came up a little bit. And I know there was some debate. Do we ask about it? Do we not? But I think that there's it comes up from time to time. I think there's been a trend maybe the last year where it's coming up more and more in pitches. But maybe tell the viewers, what is it? And what is real zero copy versus people just saying it's zero copy? And why has this become such an important issue for a lot of brands?
Yeah, good question. So I have a little bit of kind of imposter syndrome talking about it because I'm not an engineer, right? But it is an area where I've learned a lot, right? It's funny. We were talking about my background, right? I've spent my entire career in the bit, and I feel like, to the degree that people on the commercial side are experts, I feel like a real expert in the space. I know a lot. Coming to Aquifer, we don't touch media or the bid stream at all, but all of our clients do, right? And so I've learned a lot about the space. To your question specifically, so Zero copy is this idea. If I have, if I'm a multi-cloud enterprise, for instance, I might have some data in AWS, I might have some data in GCP, I might have some data on-prem with a client. If I want to query all of that data, a lot of times when you're doing a big data job, you create a temporary copy somewhere where you can get it in a single schema. Another example might be, maybe I have attribution data from an ad server or win logs and bid stream data from my DSP. There might not be a common key between those two, and I have to create a temporary copy to actually make that connection. The idea of zero copy is, can you actually in storage, right? Can you in storage query all of those databases and treat all that information as singular and bring it together?
Without moving data or shipping it to, I think that's the key, right?
And to your point about like what zero copy is real and what zero copy isn't, the reason why it's so important, we call it compute forward to be in a client's VPC. There are a lot of companies that claim to do zero copy, some really large, hyperscalers, but because they're on their own cloud, if they do zero copy, guess what the first step they have to do before doing it? So they have to copy the data to their ecosystem. So it's not really zero copy, and it's not really powering the client's actual interface. And so the Fusion technology, at least on our side that we've built, there's a lot of reasons why it's so much more effective. But the two things that it's able to do, one is true zero copy, and two is most big data jobs are done in something called Spark, which is kind of the lingua franca for big data, at least in adtech and martech. Spark usually is done in memory and RAM. And we have a way to do it with zero copy, but then also in storage. And so we just use a ton less compute as we're doing that.
So you do a lot of work with Databricks as a result of the
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Spark. Okay.
And one of my favorite rules in both business and just in like theoretical economics is Jevons paradox. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's the idea that actually as something gets more efficient, it's used more. So the old Industrial Revolution example is there were factories that were on rivers with water wheels, right? And factories with not very efficient steam engines that had to use coal away from that. And the water wheel guys were like, well, I'm not going to build a steam engine because I've got the water wheel. And then as things got more efficient, the coal companies were like, oh no, we're not going to use this much coal, right? But it actually turned out it got so cheap that the water wheel guys moved to steam engines, right?
You're doing more coal use.
The same thing is true for someone like Databricks. We're able to get Databricks so efficient on Spark that our clients are actually using more of it because the utility of it has way gone up. And so we actually, are working with Databricks to do a lot of that implementation, not just for Databricks, but across, any cloud or big data processing environment that our clients use.
This just shows that there was all of this pent up demand, right? For that processing power, right? And for the storage. And then it was just too expensive, right? And now the costs have fallen. I think people have seen the utility.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing a lot of that with as AI impacts different tasks and jobs as well, especially engineering, for example. I think we're seeing that there's a ton of pent up demand for engineering and that, just because a lot of code is written now doesn't mean that every developer is suddenly going to be out of work. What it probably means is that there's going to be just, if you look at a graph, number of apps shipped, websites built, it's just gone like thermonuclear, right? It's like a hockey stick growth because of this, and everyone's benefiting from that. So
yeah, and I see it especially in prototyping. Like a lot of my front end folks, like our head of applications and AI engineering, for instance, he has built out a whole bunch of prototypes because, as the viewers can probably understand, like we do a lot of cool stuff, but it takes a little bit of time to explain. And so what we really wanted was a set of demos so folks could touch and feel it. But over time, the demos, our clients have seen them and they're like, can I get that?
I like that. Yeah.
So, it works specifically on our own stuff. And in general, folks will bring third-party apps to power their AI. Like we work with some of the best and brightest in the industry. We have a remote MCP server that can hit. But in some cases for purpose-built stuff, we are starting to productionalize some of our apps. And I don't think that would have happened without, well, they are agentic in nature. So of course it wouldn't have happened with AI, but even sort of like the quote unquote vibe coding life work style where, my front end engineers can now productionalize something on our infrastructure that it has utility for clients in a relatively short period of time.
I think that's something people don't fully understand, or maybe they're not being honest about, is, because criticism is, oh, these vibe coded apps, they're not production ready. Of course they're not, right? It's like, it's a demo. You put it together in 2 days, but guess what? Like I've worked in product quote unquote for for almost 20 years working with design teams, engineering teams, that would have taken weeks before. You would have had to do requirements gathering, build user stories, have your epics lined up. It would have, you're going transfer one team to the other, going from prototype to clickable prototype to, then pulling it. I mean, you're 2 days now.
It's wild.
I mean, it's not production, but it's something you can get in someone's hand. You get feedback, and to your point, the client gets excited.
Yeah,
and it's a new paradigm.
And like that part of it. So to your point, 10 years ago, a PM would have drawn it on a whiteboard. An engineer would have tried to prototype it, bring it back, like you said, bring in the requirements, talk to the commercial teams, etc.
The designer design the front end, slice it up.
Someone can have an idea, make it look roughly like it should, and then if everyone's like, yeah, that's what it should be, or you edit it a little bit, then it goes off to design and it goes off to the engineering team to actually hook it up, right? And so, this idea of engineers are going to go away because so much of this can be done here. It's like, no. The new paradigm is things are going to ship really quickly. Like things are going to ship at the speed that, as a salesperson, I always thought they should, knowing nothing about how difficult it was, right? And so for that reason, you're going to need all those folks still, but they're going to need to be in much more higher value tasks because the person who actually has the idea and understands, the nexus of everything can actually ship the prototype.
That's a good point. I mean, if your job today is mostly doing things that are rote, repetitive, can be easily automated, then I think those types of jobs are probably more at risk. But like, if that stuff is, think you do it because you need to, but what you really want to do is the higher value stuff, then I think those people will be totally safe. In fact, they'll have more time to do that, which will be good. So looking at AI, is anything that you're working on Aquifer that you think is interesting, or even maybe not even AI, just generally any I don't know what you're able to share from your roadmap, any new features or any interesting things you can tell the viewers about?
Yeah, absolutely. So traditionally Aquifer, so we kind of think of the data ecosystem in 3 different layers, right? So there's sort of the operational layer, which is like, where is my stuff stored? What's the governance around it? Like, what am I allowed to do, right? In whatever jurisdiction you're in. Then there's the processing layer. That's really where we are, right? We have our underlying fusion technology. I don't think I really talked about our modules for adtech and martech that are built on that, but we have data collection and ingestion, which is our tagging and ingestion engine. We have an identity piece, which dissimilar to most of the identity folks out there have a graph and that's their IP. We don't own any data, right? For us, it's choose your cloud, choose your spine, 30 days, you have a graph. You can use our model or you can renovate it or add your own, right? And then the third piece is our enablement suite. And the best way I can describe our enablement suite is, if you're a brand and you want a CDP, you probably want to license a CDP. There are a lot of great CDPs out there, despite what, the market sometimes says. However,
there are dozens of CDPs. Out of that, there's probably 10, 15 that are,
sure,
I think they're have decent market share, very good. But you're right, there's plenty of good solutions out there, regardless of what happens to the category. And I think you could even debate, is it one category? But you're right, there are plenty of great solutions out there.
Yeah, and we can talk more about the category in a second. But I do think, and our POV is that there are a lot of other companies that have other pockets of IP, and pure play CDPs were ahead of the market. And now the incumbents with other parts of IP are wanting to in-house CDPS capabilities. And that's where we come in. It's where it's still their UX. It's still their cloud. It's still their IP. We're just kind of connecting it all process layer. And then the top layer is the interaction layer. And traditionally, again, the old joke used to be Aquifer. We took the UI, the U and the I out because the UI is yours. We don't say that so much anymore. It's kind of a joke.
Was that actually done on purpose, or was that just?
I don't know whether that was a joke internally. I haven't been here that long, or whether they did that on purpose, but it is kind of a fun thing to say, especially if, our buyers want to situate themselves.
But I always wondered, why are the valves missing? But okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk about that now too. But what's funny is a lot of people are going from a traditional UX to agentic workflows. So I said we're doing some of this stuff internally. We have a tool, for instance, a lot of our clients bring us really unstructured data. So one of the first agents we did was I think we have 13 standard schemas internally. I was like, an agent should be able to get us as close to one of those 13 standard schemas as possible. I remember back, at Beeswax, it was always like, oh, our partnerships team needs to make sure Data ROM has a beeswax adapter, and Looker has a beeswax adapter, and Snowflake has a beeswax
And you
adapter.
have to maintain all those, right?
You have to maintain those. Somebody has to do the contract. Somebody has to build it. It's just like this column is this.
Imagine you're managing 200 of those, right? I mean, it's just
Right.
that's a business almost in and of itself.
Right. It is. And just to be able to ingest that and have an agent be like, this is probably right. And it is probably right most of the time, which is great. We have another cool thing we call Talk to My Data, where a lot of clients bring and house a ton of different marketing data with us. And mostly, at least historically, it's been either their analytics team writing SQL or their data science team writing Python. We now have a chatbot where any idiot like me can say, like, what's my best performing campaign? And that'll come through. It'll also write the SQL on the side. Right. And so we have some other things like graphing and discovery. One kind of roadmap thing I can share is a lot of our customers, we work in very sensitive industries like finance and pharma, for instance. And a lot of times they say, we want to use an LLM, but we don't want to contribute the IP
To
of
the LLM
our
itself,
customer
right.
specs. So we have created this thing, which so far is really just a training tool. We call it Aquabot. It's in our Slack. And it trained me, but it's the Acrobat is the Slack interface, but it's Peace, the private AI chat environment, where we're right now working on Claude, but it could be really any LLM. And we can actually take these different tools we built as skills within this chat environment and discuss, and nothing gets back to the Claude model.
So it's like a containerized version where like you're interacting with your local model.
Yeah.
You're using the LLM, but like you're not sharing that information back. I can see why for a brand, like you're right. I mean, like,
Or an agency,
Yeah.
right? Like
ours, yeah, especially an agency.
Really
I mean,
important.
some of them might not care, but I think generally they will care, right? They okay, this is our IP. Is their client's IP? We either don't want to or can't share this for sure.
But one of the things, like I talked about how companies are becoming CDPs. I think one of the major fundamental shifts that's happened is, right, like Omnicom merging with IPG, with Axiom, Epsilon going to Publicis, Merkle going to Dentsu, but even some of the independent shops like Blue being built by Horizon or Alley being built by PMG, it's really important that it's not just a services layer, because folks need a lot of help on the services side. But, if you're a brand, it makes sense that you'd want everything in one place, and you'd want a services partner who can, treat your data properly end to end. And so a lot of those platforms, have kind of grown up relatively quickly and need sort of the underlying CDPS functionality that powers them.
And I can see for an agency too. I mean, if the goal is to like add more value, bring your own IP to clients. I mean, like all these investments, you call it, whether it's Horizons Blue or what we're doing at Omnicom with Omni, and like acquiring systems integrators, like Credero, for example, where I am, or like Sapient and Publicis, right, who can bring the technical acumen, the engineering skills, but then also building your own kind of infrastructure and IP. It's almost like, and I wrote about this a few weeks ago, the agency is more becoming, I mean, I think the goal is to be more of an operating system that can bring the clients and say, run on us.
Right. And it also creates a moat, right? Because another thing we've seen is brands are changing agencies a lot more, kind of, I don't want to say keeping more arm's length, but particularly on the media side, there's a lot of pressure there, right? And so
I don't disagree. Yeah.
Yeah. So being able to have a value proposition around what you're doing with the media is really important.
I think there's more pressure. There's certainly margin pressure. There's interest in having more transparency. And I think with more transparency, if you give clients more transparency, they're smart clients. And you see the smart ones ask for transparency, they're going to find things they don't want to pay for, and your margins probably will go down. So I think that the premise would be, okay, as an agency, you have to have other services you're charging for, right? And maybe, I mean, looking back, remember agencies split off the media business, like 80s, 90s, right? So I mean, kind of coming full circle now where, you have to have creative, you have to have strategy, you have to have analytics, and, media is part of it, right? But if you really want to drive towards outcomes, you need the whole picture.
It actually is funny because I feel like you watch Mad Men, right? And they're doing some really interesting strategy work. And at least when I got into the industry working with a lot of media agencies, they seemed pretty removed from the strategy. It was just like, the planning team was as strategy as we got. And then it was just like,
There's pretty senior people doing the media planning, but then they throw it over the wall.
Find the vendors, get the message out there and get the broadcast rates as low as possible. But what's funny is now that the data lives with the agency, they actually have the best fuel to drive the strategy. And so what I'm
Should have that loop, correct? Yeah.
totally is like a lot of these shops are surfacing some really cool insights in a way that, it would take a, white shoe strategy firm like a Bain or a McKinsey, a lot of work to get those insights to even do it.
I think that's why a lot of them are trying to move like down from like big ass pure strategy into more operational and data and tech stuff. They're trying. I mean, I know, BCG has, I think it was Gamma was their data science division. I've definitely run into, McKinsey's doing more agency selections and marketing transformations. They have a publisher offering. So I think
a lot of retail media as well.
They do. And they're doing retail media strategy. Now, I mean, you could debate whether they should be or if they're any good at it, but I don't know. But I know I've had many clients who work with them on that. But it is interesting how the space is changing. And I don't know. I mean, I remember when I got into media, I started as a media buyer, right? This is my first job out of grad school. These are not high paying jobs. You realize that's how media is actually bought and trafficked, and activated. It's just a bunch of young people working crazy hours doing this.
I skipped this part of my resume, but my first paid job in media was an intern at an Omnicom owned PR firm in DC, actually.
Symptom
I
PR.
was terrible at it. It's better to fail fast, I don't know. I didn't get it.
Well, PR back then was just writing press releases and stuff, right? I mean,
well, it's funny because I came on the scene right when social media and the internet were really becoming a thing. And what I saw was a whole bunch of vice presidents that were tearing their hair out because they used to be able to call the Washington Post or the New York Times and kill a story.
Yeah,
and then it would pop up on Facebook and they're like, why did this happen? I told them not to let it out. And it was like, because they're not in control either anymore.
You lost control of the narrative, right? It's so funny.
Yeah, but it's been wild just seeing all the different iterations of things. I don't know, where do you see it going? Like being as a consultant, but within a traditional media agency. I mean, there's got to be value to that, right? Because you've been there less than you.
Yeah, I joined Cordera, which is really the Omnicom's advisory arm.
Yeah,
and engineering arm. So it's kind of like a consultancy. What you see, like a mini version of Accenture, but I think we're probably less focused on like offshore delivery. We have some offshore teams, but the premise here would be like clients need help with engineering, and Omnicom needs to bring a more rounded package. It includes like partnerships with hyperscalers. I almost think it's table stakes that how to work with AWS, how to work with GCP, how to work with Azure, and the big hyperscalers. How to build technology solutions, whether it's for advertising use cases, marketing use cases. Because the thing is, the traditional agency model where you have a bunch of senior people planning, junior people executing. I mean, who's going to do that, right? I just don't think it's a model that lends itself well to that because it wasn't designed that way. So then you look at the systems integrators, the Accentures, the Deloittes. I came from Solomon, Capgemini before this. I mean, that's just what they do for a living. So they're good at it, and I think competing in that space is going to be challenging. But what I think is interesting, the value prop of what Publicis has built or what we're building in Omnicom is, you take the traditional agency business, media, strategy, creative. You bolt on the data side of that, Axiom, right? And then what we're building in Omni and our own platform, and then you add systems integration. There should be a flywheel there, right?
Definitely.
It should be very compelling where we can. If clients need better technology in order to get better results and outcomes from media, we can be there for them as well. So that's the premise. Is working. It's working well.
It seems so obvious. Your data is already there. You might as well, rely on your expertise to surface it. And, create some signal from the noise, if you will.
100%. Right. And so it's working well. And, the space is lots of evolution. It's exciting. I mean, it's funny too. I think some good fellas, every time I try to get out, they pull me right back in. Started in media, got into consulting, got into martech, and then it's funny. Then, here I am like a couple decades later, working with a lot of the same people, which is great. I mean, I love people in media and people in adtech. I think it's the most fun community I've been a part of. And I've gotten to work with great people like your folks at Aquifer. It's been fun, and I'm excited about your new role and what you're doing.
Yeah, me too. I mean, what I've found is at first, like I said, we don't have a UI. We have demos and stuff, but when you have a platform, you sort of have a decision tree of things. It's like, okay, they slot in here, they slot in here. At Aquifer, it's so much more about just sitting there and listening, because every problem does roughly fit into a module, but there's much less lanes than it is, like a river with pipes that can kind of meander. And so it's a breath of fresh air that every single conversation it's a real challenge, and you're helping people create something within their own product that will be their intellectual property. I'm a big believer that in adtech and martech, there are 5 things that truly differentiate companies: unique supply, unique data, unique decisioning or modeling, some unique user experience, whether it's agentic or traditional or services, right? And what I loved about Aquifer and what I love about what I do is everything we do sits kind of in the palm here, where we are just powering those things, but we don't actually own any of that ourselves, and we don't touch any of that ourselves.
I like that. And I think that the fifth one, the services one, is frequently overlooked, right? But I think that as we go into more AI and agentic, like being, I mean, you look what Palantir did with the forward deployed engineers. I mean, there's a reason why that works so well, because if you're going to be taking incredible technology that's changing quickly, match it with unique data sets like that, like you need that in order to make it happen. So, well, it's exciting. Well, thanks again for coming over and joining us here. This is a good conversation. And
this could be a lot worse.
Yeah,
I don't think they can see our view, but this is...
Yeah, we'll give them a preview.
Nice.
But life is good down here in Miami. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so, hi, Jill.
Hi.
Jill Randall. So I'm very glad to have you on the podcast today. We are sitting here in the Tresor Tower above the Fontainebleau Hotel, looking out across Miami. It's really beautiful, and we're very lucky to be here. Thank you so much for joining us. Jill, you're from Fuse, am I right? Yep.
Yes, Fuse. Fuse.is.
And the Fuse in a minute, because I read your website and I've been talking to you about it as well. I want to actually just start with you. You've obviously had a storied career yourself. You've been at big tech, and now you're in the entrepreneurial sort of startup. I want to hear about just a little bit about your career trajectory, but also how you're finding the big scary world of startup life as well.
Thank you. Yes, actually, my career kind of, in a way, helped prepare me for startup life. I started at Google back in 2002 under Sheryl Sandberg. So we were a small team. I think there were maybe 400 people in the company at the time, and really exciting, explosive growth. And I got to be a part of that. And through my role in that team, realized how important agencies were to the ecosystem for Google, and we had no special support. So that prompted my move to New York to help start the first agency partnerships team. And, from there, I did have a stint on a team that was like building a product from scratch within Google. So that was, again, kind of what helped prep me for where I am today. But did spend about half my career working with brands and agencies at Google, from performance to media buying to creative.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I kind of ran the gamut.
That's awesome. And so where was Google at this point? They must have been in a totally different place to where they are now, right?
Very, very, very different. Hypergrowth stage. The culture was just incredible. Learned so much, met so many incredibly smart people, really amazing people, and I'm forever grateful for my time there.
Yeah, I can imagine. You've taken some lessons into your new business from all that experience as well. And then you moved to
Then
Twitter.
I moved to Twitter, yes. So I took on a global role working with Group MWPP and creating strategic relationships there. So continued on my learnings from Google into Twitter, which was also in a state of growth at the time in terms of like expanding video offerings and all of that. So it was also a fantastic experience. And my last role was actually agency side. So I felt a lot of the pain points that Fuse is solving for when it comes to understanding siloed data.
Yeah.
And one of our pain points from an agency perspective is that, we have a lot of people right out of college who don't necessarily, have that training and understanding of what is an insight versus a data point. And so sometimes the default is to send out data points and the clients are like, well, what do I do with this information? So that
was a human job, wasn't it?
It's a human's job, and it still happens today, even though, I think there are tools and AI is obviously helping supplement that workflow, but, humans are human and we have our patterns and people stick to what's comfortable. And so there's that innate, that training that you need to go through to help, junior employees kind of get into that mindset of, I need to help my clients.
Yeah.
What do I do next with my marketing? So that's what we're trying to solve for.
Marketing that's one of the key learnings that I've taken away throughout my career is that you're always at the behest of your customer. You have to think about what they want, what they need, what their problems are. And I think adtech and martech is all too product salesy for that. There's a lot of businesses and products that tell you what they do, but so what? That's always a really interesting lens to put over the top there.
Exactly. And I think, dashboards have their place in a way, but the challenge with dashboards is that they're static and they don't give you the context of why is this trend happening? What is the anomaly that I need to address right away? And helping you take that extra step. Like they just don't have that intelligence.
Yeah.
And so that, again, that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And I suppose AI adds a lot of the ability to ask it, the ability to load it with an anchor or a bit of context that changes everything. And that can happen in a self-serve way as well that the human was doing manually before.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, AI is a, fantastic tool in that it helps save you all this time and there's these amazing cool things you can do with it. But it's also, you have to be a little careful in terms of how you deploy it because you can get into trouble.
Yeah.
Especially if you're just kind of blindly uploading things to ChatGPT or take your pick of the bunch and you're not like using common sense and double checking, like you can, of course have hallucinations, which is not good for anybody.
Okay. So I see a problem here, which I think you're going to talk about a little bit, which is in one hand, someone can ask it anything. And on the other hand, it hallucinates. This sounds like a challenge to overcome.
It's a huge challenge.
Right.
I think I don't quote me exactly, but I believe I saw a stat that it's something around 13% of responses to prompts are hallucinated.
Right.
Marketer, and you're trying to make budget decisions based on bad data, you're not necessarily going to make the right decisions for your business.
Yeah. I mean, that's a scary thought in a world where, the famous saying is what we don't know, which 50% works. And, all those funny things that come up that just point to bad planning or bad measurement on one or either end of the spectrum. And yes, for sure, AI overall is going to improve productivity and data and insights over the course of time. But yeah, I can see how it might just amplify a lot of rubbish as well.
Exactly. The whole expression garbage in, garbage out. We need to eliminate the garbage altogether. And, it starts with the data.
Yeah.
And it starts with making sure the data is accurate and clean and organized in a way that allows you to, have that analysis and conduct that analysis. And so that's where we start with just verifying the data. So we pull it live directly from the platforms and then have this whole verification layer so that you can trust that the data is clean and ready and organized and ready for that next step of the analysis. And a lot of other tools that are, especially the ones that are legacy, they're not AI native. They're not doing it.
Yeah.
And therefore there's a lot of mistrust in, you talk to any marketer, you talk to any CMO, they're skeptical.
Yeah.
They're like, I know I need to be using AI, in a more robust way to help me provide better outcomes for my business. But how do I do that? Where do I start? And the tools that I have used don't work.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of mistrust. And that's where we're trying to build back that trust with your data tools and data analysis tools because we've built in that trust layer.
It's it's a really interesting concept because I think that if you're a personal user, I've seen time and time again that a good looking dashboard and UI is always appealing to someone to just get a quick job done. But when there's money on the line, when there's a business outcome on the line, there must be so many leaders that don't even know their data is not trustworthy. So is it so obviously you're trying to sell to people or customers that get the problem, but there must be also so many customers that don't realize what they're looking at is the problem.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Conversation, or is it? Do you find ways of like?
moment. Like I was actually, it was like right after CES, and former colleague who's a CMO at a very large enterprise now. She's like, day one, I met with my team and they presented all these like dashboards, and she's like, I was just like, what is this? What, like, how do I make sense of this? And, for her, especially as a brand new person walking in, like, where do you even start? Like,
Yeah.
how do you know which metrics are important, which ones are driving business, and, kind of building a strategy from that?
Yeah, for sure. That's a really interesting point to make about what questions you ask the leader as well. And I also wonder, is there a way of you, I guess, getting them to stress test the problem themselves with AI? So like ask it the same question 3 times, see what it comes back with, and they'll go, oh, it actually gave me totally different answers each time.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. We've had our current clients. So, we'll start off with the first phone call and they're, skeptical and they're like, I've tried these things and they're inaccurate. And then they try ours or they compare it side by side. Even Google's own tool isn't quite as accurate as you would expect it to be. And when you do the side by side comparison, or like you said, take the same question multiple times and see the consistency in responses, that builds the trust. That's like the trust layer of no hallucinations when you actually verify. And if you, of course, want to go back and verify it on your own just to, check it, everyone comes back and they're like, wow, like I cannot believe how accurate and close it is. But I do want to touch on your point about what questions to ask, because that's actually what we're hearing a lot from some of our clients and potential clients, where I don't even know where to start with the questions. So we will help.
Before.
Well, it depends on the expertise level. So if we're talking to an expert marketer or analyst, they already know what questions to ask. They have no problem just jumping right in and asking questions. But if it's like a CEO or maybe a startup founder who doesn't have a marketing background, those are the people who need a little bit extra guidance when it comes to, okay, like I know this is important, but like, where do I start? What are the right questions? And
what's important in
what's
those
important.
questions.
Exactly. So we have some preset prompts. We're also providing some more proactive, health checks or, scorecards that help you identify more quickly what are the key critical areas you need to address in your marketing. So we're working on ways to be more proactive. But if you already have that marketing expertise, people love our products.
I can imagine. Yeah. And as an ex-Googler as well, it must be cathartic, not in in an us versus them way, but just in a, wow, it's so challenging that even their technology finds it a struggle. So you must enjoy that process as well of fixing that issue.
Yeah, it is very rewarding. I mean, it's harder than it sounds. I mean, I think there's a lot of like, oh, I can just go and, vibe code something in, minutes. And it's like, well, it's not quite that easy.
Yeah.
There's still that contextual layer and that proprietary piece, that layer that we've built in specific for marketing. So like we're vertical in terms of, we have that expertise in the performance marketing area.
Yeah. And I guess, I don't know, this is maybe just me with a harebrained idea, but I guess it would be really interesting to see if you could quantify the scale of the error when you're using the wrong data in terms of like, because that's when it becomes really real to someone who is, just got their interns vibe code dashboard and connected a brittle API to, their meta ads or whatever. And they're going, okay, I'm getting what I want. And all of a sudden they see something that's like, well, firstly, you're not. And secondly, the scale of the problem has, the consequence as well.
Yeah. And that consequence sometimes is, we're seeing that Meta can shut down your ad account. So in terms of quantifying, okay, what does it mean to your business if Meta suddenly shuts down your advertising account because you didn't have the right connections into their platform, and therefore, it was an unauthorized use of their, data.
Yeah.
So, making sure you're working with a tool that has that approved API access, then you don't have to worry about that happening.
Yeah. Look, I think that's actually a really understated future challenge for the next couple of years, because as the world gets more API connected and as the world, or as our industry lessons in human resource, I think that there's going to be so many attempts at just plugging that into that and that into that. And so I think that narrative and that capability of having strong connections into the data,
Yes.
so many fragile systems running around now.
It's exactly right. Yes, that's exactly right. And it's also, just, it's like that continuous loop. So you make a decision, you implement it, which, by the way, we are working towards we call it fuse execute, where, okay, you've got the recommendation. Now you just click a button, you approve it, and you don't even need to log into your account to make the change. So that's coming. But yeah, I mean, in terms of that loop, you've executed it. Now that data goes back into Fuse, and then it's going to take that into account for the next analysis, and making sure that in real time, like, your budgets are optimally deployed across all the channels, because things change, things happen. There's seasonality. There's who knows what's going to happen in the world, and so to be able to have that agility is really important as a marketer.
Absolutely. And Jill, tell me, what was the journey towards starting Fuse? Was it born of an aha moment? Was it born of a pain that just was happening? This just needs to be fixed. What was going on there?
Give credit to my co-founder for that. This was kind of the original actual concept of Fuse was to combine both the automation of, like, creating slide decks and presentations to present either to clients or to your internal teams or your CEO, CMO, or CFO, and that analysis and ability to holistically analyze across all data sets. So it was experiencing that pain point ourselves at different agencies, but the original idea was to automate that visualization so you can communicate to your stakeholders what those recommendations are and what the insights are. We are now, actually, we do have that visualization capability with Fuse. So yes, to answer your question, it was born from a pain point that we've experienced our entire careers. But for me, I'm terrible at creating PowerPoints and designing slides and all that. And now, thankfully, we have AI to help us with that. And so, kind of combining those two together, like, we do have the ability to create visualizations using Google's Nano Banana for the technology piece to help communicate those, what is that data story that needs to be told to the decision makers to approve those decisions. So that's what it comes down. That's kind of the whole point with creating all these slides, is to communicate, here's the analysis, here's the why, here's the story, here's what we need to do next.
And that sort of comes full circle to the so what. What is the point of the thing for that customer or for that marketer?
Yeah, that's exactly. We have the what, which is the data point. The so what does this mean? Why is this important? Which is our secret sauce. And then the recommendations of, now what? What do I do next with my marketing? And that's kind of why we've created that framework to, again, help marketers make better decisions.
Well, that's awesome. It's a cause that I think the idea of making data more believable and reliable in an AI world is something you're going to fight against tide going that way. And I think it's a really good journey to go on and a really good outcome. So thank you so much. Are you here for the rest of the week? Are you
here? Yeah, I'm actually here for the rest of the week. I'm actually staying through for F1. So if anybody wants to get in touch, please reach out, either LinkedIn, Jill Randall, or jill@fuse.is. Or come find me. I'll be probably hanging around the Fontainebleau.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jill, for your expertise.
Thank you for having me. Oh, this is great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here we're at Possible 2026. This is, I guess, getting towards the end of date number 2. And here with Doug Loretano from Tuple. Oh, great to see you, as always.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So, get a lot to talk about today. You launched a new company recently, didn't you?
I did. 60 days in, more or less.
All right. And, just public service announcement. He is no longer the adtech pizza guy.
I'm taking a break, at least.
Good.
Probably, maybe permanent, but not sure.
All right. We'll see where it goes. But love to hear about Tuple and like a little about the company, what you're trying to solve. But maybe before we jump into that, maybe a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Doug Loretano, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York guy all my life.
What neighborhood, by the way, did you grow up in?
Bay Ridge.
Nice.
Yeah, Bay Ridge in Brooklyn.
married a Long Island girl 18 years ago, and she dragged me out there kicking and screaming, and I've been there ever since.
What's town Long Island, if you don't mind?
Cold Spring Harbor.
Okay.
Yeah.
North Shore.
It's a nice place to raise a family, and it's not quite New York City. So
There's that amazing whaling museum there, isn't there?
do have a whaling museum. That's a heck of a pull there.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I went there, I think, in 5th grade on a
There you
school
go.
field trip, and it was pretty cool. So, yeah, a lot of history. I mean, it's like goes back. I think it's founded like 1680s or something like that. It goes way back, right? I mean,
You know much better than I.
Right.
Either you did research or you just know a lot about Long Island.
no,
towns.
I spent 10 years on Long Island growing up, and I had a teacher who was just really into that. So, yeah, it's pretty part of the world. So, but yeah, so like moved out to Long Island, and you're so before founding this company, you were CEO of another firm, right?
Yeah. So 5 years ago, I was hired to start the advertising business for Civic Science, which at the time was a research company, had some access to pretty interesting first party data. Obviously, that data all around declared consumer intent could be very valuable in advertising. So they hired me to start up that business, and recently left after the company more or less pivoted into being an advertising company in total. So as the founder of Civic Science says, I left the company much better than I came to it. And
What you did became the strategy. So yes.
yeah. And it's actually a really interesting approach. They have voluntary polls in and around premium publisher content. They get some really interesting signal. Users share who they are and what they like to do, how they like to travel, what they like to buy, where they like to eat. And all of that data can be compiled into profiles and can build really interesting custom segments for advertisers. So it was a pretty interesting business, and pretty proud of what we did there.
Nice. So 2 months in, but this was stealth mode for a while, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. So 2 months in, officially launched Tuple 2 months ago. Been building the platform for about a year. Part of my engagement with Civic Science was over the last year, basically a very long transition. And what got us to what really drove the approach and how we're launching Tuple was actually a significant problem that we found while building Civic Science, which, Civic Science has really interesting data set. Instead of plugging into every single DSP to give advertisers access to it, we were able to leverage curation, working directly with some SSPs to create deal IDs around these custom segments.
Sure.
What we were seeing from our buyers was that we would send them 10 million impressions a day in this custom package. And in their DSP seat, they would only see 4 million impressions. So at first we thought this was like some sort of a glitch. Started working closely with the SSPs to try to figure that out. Was seeing this across all our customers that we were working with.
So it's consistent.
And what we ended up realizing, and this was tons of conversations with different folks across the industry, at platforms, even at publishers, what we realized is that the traffic shaping and throttling, TPS limits, all these things that platforms, both on the sell and buy side, were doing in order to minimize or to reduce their own infrastructure costs, was basically leaving really good impressions on the cutting room floor. Like I said, Civic Science was building these custom segments. The users we were building them around were, had persistent IDs. This wasn't, some uncookied or, some.
This wasn't like cookieless, ID-less traffic. These were legit impressions.
This was not only legit, but very valuable impressions. So, like I said, that was about 2 years ago.
So because that DSPs weren't aware, there's no bidding going on, ads weren't served up. It could basically
DSP. So buyers in their DSP seat were not aware that there were another 6 million impressions that they could be bidding, because basically it's a huge number. And that 40% number was pretty that was around the median of what we were seeing when we saw this discrepancy.
Limits and, like as you said, like the potential, like the costs because of the number of bits going through.
Because of so if you think about the last decade plus of programmatic, with header bidding really becoming front and center and just everybody working through the header, there's just so much duplication of inventory that a DSP needs to be able to run their business and not just be this massive infrastructure play. While at the same time, they have certain clients that want to achieve supply path optimization, but I actually view it as many of them want supply path optionality. And they want to be able to buy from many different supply sources, whether it's from a business relationship or some other preference. So many of the legacy DSPs aren't able to say, hey, I'm only going to work with this smaller set of SSPs, because they already have clients that want this, want to be able to operate.
Brands are working with they all have header bidding. Yeah. So, I mean, like breaking the number down is just not an option for them.
Right. Yeah. So
there's tons of traffic, and it's traffic that's, might even be the same bid coming through.
Oh,
like duplicated, sent across multiple SSPs that they come to hit some at the same time, right?
So basically what I think on average, what a legacy DSP sees, or what a buyer in a legacy DSP sees, is 40% or so of unique impressions duplicated dozens of times.
I've heard it might be up to only 20% unique in some instances, like of 80% duplication. Maybe that's a little high.
I'm saying 40% of the total universe of unique impressions.
Yeah.
So, but then that 40% is duplicated dozens of times.
That's wild.
So if you want to say like what is actually like unique impressions, it's maybe
less than that, right? Maybe as low as 15% or 10%, right?
So if you think about it, if you want to,
so you're saying this culling process is kind of normal. Like they kind of have to.
Yes and no. Is there a better way? Which is a good segue into how we think about what that better way could be with Tuple. So Tuple we are building an enterprise level DSP, an omni-channel DSP, but we're building it on what we believe is a better foundation. And so if you think about, everybody in programmatic wants to talk about competing with the walled garden, Google or Meta, when there's an impression on one of their properties.
They're owned and operated inventory.
Right.
So one of their properties. Okay.
Right, one of their properties on YouTube or on Instagram or what have you, that like a buyer can access that impression, right? A buyer also is not like there isn't dozens upon dozens of duplicates of that impression for a system to have to cull through to be able to recognize that impression.
Well, it's their inventory, it's their DSP, it's their impression. Right. Yeah, so they control it 100%.
I think about it as like a one-to-one, right? Well, we should try to copy that, right? Like if you want to start a DSP today, which I started 60 days ago, but if you wanted to start that, how would you build it? So that's what we were
the open web. Like how would
how would you do that? So what we're basically doing is we are working with a small number of supply partners. Those supply partners,
these publishers or SSPs.
So we're working with a small number of SSPs. We are working with SSPs that can enable us to add logic by being within a container on their side. So we co-locate with the SSP so that we're able to deduplicate, and we're able to ensure that the entire bit stream from each SSP we can see, but we don't need to push into our platform.
So everybody money. Everything, yes, everything from bitstream.
Yeah,
a lot of information.
We can see it, right? We can see it, but it doesn't need to move from their platform to our
platform. That's a big problem for a lot of DSPs. Is that there's no way they can handle the volume of contextual and identity signals.
Right. So we're able to limit the infrastructure costs of that because we're only working with 2 to 3 SSPs, and because there's no push from their side to our side unless it's something that is necessary, not duplicate. And so that is going to create as close to a one-to-one walled garden-like access to inventory as there has been in programmatic.
I was just different for, like, let's say what the trade desk is doing with OpenPath. How can you compare the two?
So I think OpenPath, forget all of the, controversy around different things regarding it and how they engage with different parts of the industry. A one-to-one, they're creating a one-to-one, right? I think that's the right way. Now, part of the issue that and some of the issues I think behind some of that controversy is that they have these long-time partners in the SSPs, and they're basically funneling money in one direction versus the other. And they're also taking control away from their buyers. Control is another like kind of tent pole.
Control as in decisioning or control as in
decisioning, but like basically like they're deciding where the money goes, when I know that some buyers don't necessarily want that. But I think, but as a concept, open path, I think is the right way. Now with Tuple, building out direct relationships with every publisher, it's not in the cards, not in the short term.
open web. There's like
Right.
millions of publishers, sure.
Right. So, we can't pursue that. So I think the approach that we're taking is, we're leveraging some pretty unique things that are going on in the industry today. So I mentioned the containerization before. One thing that we're using is the Agentic real-time framework from the IRD. That is kind of a standardized the way that different players can work within a container. Most of the containerization partners to the actual curators are custom algo folks and not DSPs. But I think having all of the logic and the decisioning, being able to take advantage of the full timing of the round trip of an impression just puts us in a pretty interesting spot.
So is the decisioning not happening in a DSP? It's actually happening in this containerized environment, or?
So we have some of our decisioning happens in the containerized environment.
Okay.
Now, the reason why all of it is not happening there or more of it is because you do have a limited amount of time. So it's usually below
milliseconds, right?
Yeah, below 5 milliseconds, which is, that's
Pretty fast, yeah.
pretty fast. But basically, when you have that additional 5 milliseconds to make a decision that can greatly affect your own infrastructure costs and the ways, and, I'm describing all this. What I think is more unique about it than necessarily the technology is the kind of partnership and cooperation between the SSP and the DSP. I think part of the reason we've gotten to the place we have with programmatic is because the SSP and the DSP relationship has devolved into this, really contentious relationship.
Right. It's a problem, yeah.
And it's, not only are there, swipes taken on conference stages and in the press, but an SSP doing bid stuffing where they're sending, multiples of the same bid to a DSP because that DSP is, doesn't respond the first time, or if they do so the SSP does things in the way that they send things to a DSP that the DSP would not approve of. And the DSP does things with the SSP.
They'll do other things like with cookies or with
all sorts of different things, and
or adjusting take rates, ID bridging, like shady behavior for sure. Yeah.
I could be out on this balcony all day talking about stuff like that. It drives me nuts. But
adtech, there's no shortage of questionable behavior, that's for sure.
That's right.
But there's a better way to do things.
What we aspire to do is to have a much better relationship with the SSP, because the way that we see it is that, yes, the SSP needs to represent and work for the publisher to some extent, but the SSP is also beholden to the ultimate, funder of all this, which is the advertiser, right? They have the dollars, and the SSP has a relationship with the advertiser oftentimes. So if we are trying to make the same cohorts happy, right? We're trying to fund content creation and the open web.
Publishers, keep them going, right? Keep monetization high, sure.
We do have the same, intentions. Then we should be able to collaborate and work closer together, and not get to a point where either one of us are doing things that are not in each other's best interest.
How would you compare what you're doing to some of the SPO or supply path optimization work that's been going on? I mean, would it similar?
So the thing about supply path optimization is that I feel like a lot of that is when a third party outside of an SSP or a DSP tries to find the best way. Now, I'm not saying that those third parties can't be right and they can't be good at what they do, but this is trying to solve for a problem that was created and just shouldn't it's hard to describe. It's an unnecessary problem. You know, if an SSP is working with a bunch of resellers, which creates a
massive duplication
right.
and lack of transparency and stuff like that. Sure.
But at the same time, I would also, an interesting kind of ingredient to all of this is that part of the reason why SSPs may have, you know, tolerated more resellers, some of the ones that may be more aggressive, kind of duplication themselves, all these different things is because most legacy DSP platforms are designed to send a higher bid response rate to more QPS. So what that basically means is
they're incentivized just to take higher volume,
just the way their platform
more QPS.
So the same way that a publisher makes more money when they add one more header bidding, right? A SSP makes more money when they send one more impression, typically.
I mean, yes, but ultimately, this is a law of diminishing returns, though, right? So publishers keep adding more header bidders, they keep adding more SSPs. At some point, okay, like history has shown maybe that's not the best strategy. So,
no. It depends on what you want the outcome of that strategy to be. Like, do you want your as a publisher, do you want your website to take forever to load and to have a terrible consumer experience?
Just the outcomes we do that, sure, yeah.
Right. So, like, yes, there's bad outcomes, but at the same time, a lot of publishers are under not only like quarterly revenue pressure, many are under daily revenue pressure.
I mean, it's daily now, especially with the declines we're seeing in referral traffic. I mean, it's 20, 30, 40%. I'm dinner with a big publisher tonight, and they've been telling me things like this. So it's getting bad, and people don't realize there's a big revenue stream for pubs.
100%.
And, 100%. Having seen that get cut down by maybe up to 50% and with no end in sight, right? With the rise of AI search. So it's going to be, so I think there's definitely a need for some solution like this. So, well, it's exciting. So 2 months in, are you selling, maybe it's too early to say, I don't know what you're able to disclose. Are you selling direct to brands, partnering with agencies? Like what's your go-to-market so far?
Yeah. So right now our pilot partners, 2 of them are curators. So curators, so we're partnering together to be able to allow their clients to be able to buy more of what the curator is packaging.
So the package of cutting it to your liking, and then
Yep. One is a direct brand.
Okay.
And one is an independent agency. So it's a little bit across the board. I don't foresee us being a focus for a holding company, to be honest. You know, I know that they have lots of different needs that I think we're not going to focus on. And
some of them have pretty robust, like immature curation capabilities. So
sure.
Maybe.
Yeah. I think, look, what I think is unique about what we're doing is I think Ari Arrow wrote in one of his newsletters recently that a DSP needs to either have unique inventory or unique data, right? He was basically saying that without unique inventory or unique data, there's nothing.
So right.
You know, Emily and I spoke a lot before I made the final decision to start Tubwell. We have unique access to inventory. We give the buyer unique access to inventory. Now, should that, is that inventory something that other platforms should be able to offer access to? Yes, I truly believe that.
Like with your approach, like you have it now, like I guess people could copy this approach, but like your approach is giving you access to this unique inventory.
Right. And again, like our intention is we want to be an enterprise level DSP, an omni-channel DSP, not just a DSP that is trying to buy this other half of impressions, but we felt like the foundation of what we're building on needed to be really strong and shouldn't have the same issues that the industry as a whole, the ecosystem as a whole has right now.
I bet building a DSP was not easy.
There's a lot of
the latency requirements, and with it's I think people don't realize all tech is hard, but I think DSPs, from what I can, I've never built one, but I'm guessing it's a difficult thing to build.
Well, look, I'm not a developer, so technically I didn't build it, so not with my own hands. But I have really, really smart folks that we're building something that's going to continually improve over time. I can't sit here and pretend like, 2 months in that we have the absolute best DSP that's in the market. But I think our initial approach does set us apart. And I think over time, that one-to-one access that we have will allow for performance that is much closer to the walled gardens than it is to typical programmatic.
You wonder, if some of the functionality that's been in DSPs migrates out, and I think that's already happening, right? Like assuming that continues, end of the day, does it become easier to make DSPs? I think in theory, yes, but I think it also becomes harder to run a DSP business model. So I'm curious what the future will hold in terms of it's an interesting approach because this is a really fresh take on it, right? But this fresh take is actually going into supply and rewiring the way people work and having a fresh way of identifying what you're saying is just some inventory that was just sitting there that no one even was able to tap into.
And I think, I give a lot of credit to to the SSPs who, 5 years ago or so,
they wouldn't have done this, would they?
Well, no, I also, they wouldn't have done it maybe, but also, I think a lot of the trade press was talking about how the SSP is dead, right? And between curation, the sell side decisioning and containerization, really allowing third party to get closer to the impression, to start making decisions.
It's breathed new life into their business model. There's no doubt, 100%. Right? Yeah, I mean, you're right. 5 years ago, many people were questioning if SSPs even exist, right?
Yeah, and now people question about DSPs,
right?
Which look, I think there's a healthy programmatic ecosystem has the two different entities. Again, we think that there should be a lot better coordination. And there shouldn't be this angst between both sides. I'd be happy if that spread and old enemies became new friends.
Sure, right.
Yeah, I'm not too confident that will happen.
There are no permanent enemies, only permanent interests, right?
That's fair. But I think this kind of collaboration, because a lot of us want to talk about all the dollars going to the walled gardens and how programmatic we as a whole, we need to be better. Right. I think unless we're all working together and both sides of the equation are really working together, that's just not going to happen. So, I think we want to be, we want to drive that, and we think that it's going to be an advantage for us. And I'm a relationships guy. That's been my career partnership.
There you are.
So I'm hoping that I can help drive that from a people perspective, and from a technology perspective. I think it's all there to happen, and I'm pretty excited about where things are going.
Well, completely agree. You're a great relationship guy. It's been cool building a relationship with you and hanging out, whether it's over pizzas or over this. I'd love to maybe check in a couple months, see where you are. And on the regular Signal and Noise, we do, as you know, longer form hour, even 90 minutes. So I'd love to get you on when you're ready and you've got maybe some more interesting news to share to talk more about what you're doing. But thanks a lot, Doug. It's cool to see you.
Thanks for having me. All right, Rio.
Signal and Noise, where possible. We're almost at the end of day 2, and I'm here with a special guest, Nish Gore, Chief Data Officer at Zeta Global.
Rio,
see you, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, because you made it.
Yes.
I was really stoked to get you here. Wanted to spend some time with you. Your team was great, by the way, in terms of getting this set up, but wanted to hear a little bit about you. And I think Zeta is a really cool story that a lot of people have heard of, but don't really know enough about you. So I know our listeners are going to be really excited to learn more. So maybe we can start out by just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Nish Gore. I'm the Chief Data Officer at Zeta. I sold my company alongside our CTO to Zeta about 9 years ago. And that platform became what is today modern Zeta. Prior to that, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've had several companies, predominantly in the martech space, but also done a lot of fun offline businesses. I started a coffee roasting company
Nice.
Owned a,
Okay.
owned a couple bars in San Francisco for about 10 years. So just
Still own the bars, or
I sold the bars. When I got to about 32, I think I had enough of the late nights, and
owning a bar is a late night business,
it's a
isn't
late
it?
night business, and it's really fun. I was doing it with some of my close friends. So, but always been very close to technology, engineer from Cornell historically. So, and that's been something that's propelled me through my career.
The company that you sold to Zeta, what type of firm was it? What was the core tech?
Yeah. So the core technology was actually machine learning, big data pipeline for recommendations. So we were using it in a marketing capacity for content recommendations. And it was actually doing things like automating emails and automating media. This is back in 2017 when we sold. We started working on it a few years before that. So at that time, we were basically one of the front runners of machine learning for marketing and media that existed in the ecosystem. When I say that today, you're like, well, everyone's doing a piece of that. But
back then, people were not. You're right.
Yes. So when Zeta acquired our platform, quickly realized that we had pointed our platform at the wrong set of customers, solving the wrong problem, but the opportunity was really, really massive.
What customers were you pointing it at? What problems are you trying to solve?
Yeah, we were really pointed at the publishing community and automating content recommendations across email and other channels that they run,
as opposed to like journey orchestration.
Yeah, there was journeys, but it more so, if you look at the money in marketing and marketing technology, you got to be focusing on retailers. You got to go to insurance. You got to go to telecom. You got to go to auto.
Where the money is.
You go to the money, yeah. So
it's not on the publisher side, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, they're being squeezed again, but it's not on the publisher side. But I will say that even then, the technology also needed to be upgraded to become more enterprise grade. We were targeting mid market. Zeta soundly plays in enterprise. We have 51% of the Fortune 100 use us in a very meaningful way. I think 24% of the Fortune 500 now. So
I think that's interesting. We could probably circle back on that about like how like Zeta has like a really impressive market share among a lot of big companies, and people may not even know that you're there. But like before we go to that, like the decisioning, journey orchestration, you were early. So I remember around this time, maybe around 2018, 2020, there was a bunch of tools that, and I know Adobe ended up building theirs. Like you were early to market. Like what, and granted, you said you focused on what you felt was the wrong type of customer, but like what made you think that was the future?
So I had historically owned an ESP, and that was a function of me owning bars and not knowing how to get access to my own customers. So that's when I started to realize that, if you think of the average customer, you need to understand two things very well. Where are they reachable and where are they likely to respond? And people respond across multiple channels in multiple ways, different economics. If you solve those two problems, you have the ability to cut through the noise. So at Boomtrain, what we were doing was really solving that problem, right? We were trying to figure out, where are you reachable? Where are you likely to respond? What are you going to respond to? And then using essentially a big data pipeline that ingested everything we knew about a customer and then made it available to the enterprise to then action on marketing. And the interesting thing today is that although machine learning has become AI, you still need the data pipelines. You're still answering the same questions. You just have a different approach now, right? The world has become generative. So many of the same principles and the modern stack that we had put in place has transpired into what we have today and has made Zeta really a leader from the technology space in our opinion.
I like that you said that. I mean, and I think a lot of people who have gotten into AI the last 2 or 3 years don't realize a lot of what we call AI now really, like we might even calling machine learning 4 or 5 years ago.
There's generative AI now, but many AI systems still run on machine learning. That's true.
Take a look at Zeta. I remember I used to do a lot of work in the email space, with marketing automation, vendor selection for ESPs. I remember running into you guys a bunch of times. Like I think a lot of if I remember, a lot of like really big travel hospitality clients.
Yeah.
You had worked with Zeta for many years. That was my first time I ran into you, but it's been cool to see this evolution from what, it seemed like a lot of transactional email, guest relations, things like that. But then really you've added a bunch of stuff over the years. It's been cool to chart that evolution. Love if you could maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I joined Zeta in 2017, I think we made two very critical decisions about how we thought marketing and advertising were going to evolve. The first decision we made, it was that we believe that acquire, grow, and retain, traditionally 3 use cases that are run across different types of platforms, needed to be in one platform. So you needed to be able to acquire, grow, and retain in one place. This is not the composable model necessarily, but what this model is more akin to is where the world is moving. It's a decision system, because your next best customer might be someone who already bought from you previously. So that was decision number one. Acquire, grow, retain in one platform. We're going to work towards that. Decision number two is that we felt that the identity and data enrichment asset that we could put together could power, acquire, grow, and retain in the same way that walled gardens power their environments. So we subsequently made acquisitions like Discuss, the largest commenting platform online, Live Intent, the largest ad exchange for email, and we cultivated a data and identity asset that now basically ends up in the form of intelligence, and intelligence is now actionable by AI. So, I like using the metaphor of Zeta is like a walled garden for the open web, because you get very similar mechanics and around measurement, around identity, around enrichment that you'd find in a walled garden. We make that available across channels where it historically has not been available.
Seems like you're also pulling in features from CRM, features from ESP and marketing automation in order to hit those three phases, correct?
The power of Zeta data meeting customer data in a siloed environment that's available to them is what unlocks the value. So if you think about the core technologies that underpin Zeta, it really is three. There's a managed media solution. So we are a big provider of, basically think of it as like intelligence-driven media, display, CTV, audio, all the channels.
So the buys actually, do you connect to DSPs?
We have a DSP.
You have a DSP, okay.
Correct. Yeah, we acquired the assets from Seismic Rocket Fuel, and then obviously needed a lot of retrograding and upgrading, but that became a foundation. And now we're very much
work with them back in the day. Sure. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Yep.
And now we're very much moving in the agentic space. The other core technology behind Zeta is a CDP. So we have a data foundation.
Was that homegrown or was that an acquisition?
It was homegrown. And that was much more adjacent to our marketing automation stack. And if you follow Forrester, we've been the #1 rated marketing automation platform for owned media, namely email, SMS, a website, for the last 3 years. So
it's like this, the last 4 or 5 years has been this big push for, activating first party data, from CRM and owned media on paid.
Sure.
You were really early to this.
Very early. Yeah. And our ability to, resolve identity across the open web to resolving identity that comes from our customers, identity they don't even know, is probably the best in the world. So I give you a data point on it. A visitor on the open web in the US, not authenticated, we can likely resolve to our graph with a first name, last name, postal address, phone number about 50% of the time. So you can imagine the resolution rate we can bring to enterprises that we work with.
From an IDR service that you built.
Yes, it's baked into our platform.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't sell identity resolution as a standalone service. Yeah. The way that Zeta brings our solutions to market is you would use us for media activation, right? So either owned media activation, data infrastructure and CP, or paid media activation. And then you get our platform solution that underpins it. And really, if you think about the last 10 to 15 years, the consolidation onto Databricks and Snowflake have been the setup for what this is today, because now marketers have brought their data together. Shouldn't that data be used in one place to acquire, grow, and retain? The AI can work off of it in one place. So all of these pieces have been coming together in a way that, candidly, we didn't even expect it to be this quick. But the tailwinds that have been created over the last few years are really powering Zeta's growth.
Do most of your customers have a cloud data warehouse like a Snowflake or Databricks they're using?
Generally they're connecting to a cloud warehouse, zero copy into Zeta, and then obviously we provide them with a lot of identity enrichment, we provide them with data enrichment, and then really the core of those, we provide them with intelligence to acquire, grow, and retain in ways that they wouldn't be able to do without us.
What are some it's a really comprehensive solution. Do you usually sell it as a suite together, or do you go in and some clients will say, I want a CDP, some will say I want email? How do you usually approach that?
It usually starts with a use case. So it's either one of the three, but interestingly enough, our happiest customers are the ones that do the most with us, which is a really good sign, because when you're using us as your system of truth for your CDP and for your own media, and then you start doing paid media with us, that gives us a lot of potential to grow. It also gives the customers a lot of potential to really make their marketing efficient. And in this new world, I like using the expression context is the new content. So if you think of the old world, you'd have, hey, I have a profile with 300 attributes on it. I'm going to use that through a machine learning model to determine what I should send to somebody. But in the new world, because AI can operate off of real-time data, and your context about what you're trying to do right now in this moment determines what should be shown and presented with and where. Zeta's graph is real time because our code lives expressively across the entire open web, right? Think of very large publishers to very small publishers, and we're able to really decipher what the context of an individual is in that moment, and then use that for personal
So
data.
the solution, someone could come in on one channel. Let's say it could come in a web form, or you could do a cookie sync and match them, and then you use your identity graph. You identify, you enrich it if need be, start to see who they are, and then you can build out, like, you could, wherever they are, you're going to be able to touch them, right?
We can touch them anywhere. We can also tell you their patterns across different competitors. Are they shopping more with you or your competitor? How would you get that person to shop more with you if they're with your competitor? What are their drivers? What are their need states? Our graph exposes all of that type of information.
Who are you usually competing against when your competitor sells? Are these like CDP RFPs? Are these CRM? Are they?
Sure.
I mean, because you do a lot of things.
Yeah, so it's a good question. It depends on the inroad that someone has taken to get to Zeta. So on the RFP side, that generally will control CDP or marketing automation, we see all the players, the big guys, right? The Adobe's, the Salesforces of the world. On the media side is typically share shift, right? So it's, hey, I'm using Zeta now because Zeta delivered better results, and I was able to measure the outcomes with more efficacy. So it's usually not, winner takes all in the media space. There's a collection of partners, but Zeta is taking more media share from others because we're delivering performance.
Media definitely more fractured, complex. Who's doing the buys in the DSP? Is it typically an agency? Is it like a brand in-house team, or is it? It's probably all over the place, right?
It's all over the place. We have a very large agency business. We platform their businesses. We give them access to our tools, and they can actually operate within our platform. We're also seeing, if you start on the enterprise side with our CRM solutions, our CDP, our marketing automation stack, you very quickly move into the media side there too. And sometimes that's an in-house team, or sometimes they will direct their agency to work with us. So it can go a number of different directions.
And is a lot of the media business, is it more social? Is it open web? Is it like what?
Yeah, it's definitely more open web. And certainly more CTV these days, right? So CTV, display are probably the two largest channels there. We do get directed to do social, and by the way, some people are reachable on social and likely to respond on social, but it's part of an integrated strategy that our AI systems will help determine.
Are you able to share anything from your roadmap that's planned out over the next few months, years you're really excited about?
I think the main thing, and it's on stage here at Possible, will be on stage in Cannes in a couple weeks, is Athena, right? Athena is our decisioning AI that sits directly within our platform. It can talk to the Zeta data. It can talk to customer data. It can help you navigate. CEO likes to use the metaphor that we built a 747. Customers know how to fly a Cessna. Athena can help bridge the gap to get maximum value from Zeta and take an ROI that we're already delivering and make it even greater for our customers. And it is a amazing capability that's embedded into the platform. And I know, if you go to websites today of Zeta and even our competitive set, it all sounds the same. Everyone sounds like they're doing the same thing. I encourage...
There's a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, there's a lot of smoke. I encourage everyone to actually go and try to ask for a demo, see the product, even interact with it yourself, so you get firsthand experience of like what it means to be agentically turbocharged in a marketing capacity. What can you do that's faster? How does measurement become easier? How does data analytics become easier? These are all the things you can actually do within the platforms. I encourage everyone to try it out.
Any thoughts on, there's been a lot of talk about how, as these AI tools capabilities get better and tools get rolled out, that, because you can connect via MCP server, maybe the UIs and the front ends of these things, Salesforce just went headless the other day, for example. Like, thoughts on like how that might impact Zeta? Like, are you preparing for that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so I think that the main thing right now, and I wrote something on Medium about this a few weeks back, is that there's a lot of noise about who gets disrupted, who gets to stay, and why.
Oh, there is, yeah.
Right? The SaaS apocalypse. But the reality is that if your decisioning system is set up correctly for the enterprise, it provides them with so much value that the friction to leave is too high. And so the thing I love about Zeta's model is that we can easily work with enterprises and their vendors, but we consolidate intelligence into our platform in a way that makes us very sticky. And it's not about a channel. It's not about a media strategy. It comes back to having a system in place that helps an enterprise do more. And by system, you can't do one thing. You have to be able to acquire, grow, retain. You have to be able to provide enrichment, provide identity. Those are all the pieces and building blocks that end up being very, very hard to replace in the market.
I think that's a good point. I mean, like, I guess the way I look at it is if you build really solid capabilities, you can look at them almost as engines, right? Like regardless of who agents they are, and maybe brands will even have their agents.
Sure.
You know, the agencies, I don't really think it matters, but if you have these agentic, either agents or agentic workflows, you're going to they're going to build across things. If you're building the best capabilities that work the best, that's where the action still
Own
is.
the brain.
Totally.
That's the thing. You got to own the brain. And Zeta's system is set up to essentially be the brain of the enterprise.
I like that a lot. How's the show been for you so far, by the way?
It's been hot, but
It's getting hotter here in the sun. It's like sun creeps up. Yeah.
Beautiful view. Really enjoying the show. You know, Possible is one of the touch points of the year that I am really excited about because I get to meet all of our agency partners, get to meet some important data vendor partners of ours, and then customers. Our direct enterprise customers are here and they're all anxious to learn and connect in the Miami heat.
It's been cool watching Possible evolve. This is my third year here. I missed the first year, but I think it started very ad tech heavy, became, let's say, more brand heavy last time. They were incenting brands to come here, offering to even pay their tickets if they went to 3 vendor meetings. And then, look, I'm with Omnicom. There's a ton of Omnicom and other agency people here that I did not see that before. So the whole, and I guess it makes sense. You get the brands, the agencies will follow. So
of course,
so it's been cool. And the tech vendors I think have been here from the start. So I've had some incredible meetings here with people, including this. So it's been a lot of fun, and I wish you lots of success in the show. And I'd love to connect up again too.
We'd love to. I'll be there. Would love to do another one of these and tell you what's changed. And we're gonna be announcing some new stuff at Cannes. So really looking forward to that as well.
If you're interested, we do longer, like 60 to 90 minute long form podcasts on the regular pod. Let's keep in touch. And when you got a bunch of stuff you really want to talk about and go deep on, let me know. We can schedule another one.
100%.
Nish.
Thank you so much.
Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rio.
Noise at the Possible conference on day 2. We've actually moved inside because it's piping hot out there on the balcony. We've got Tom Koch here from 12 Labs. And thank you for joining us. I want to hear a little bit about your company. I'm really excited to hear about what you guys do and how it's playing into the media space. But first off, a little bit of an intro to yourself. Where have you come from? What's your background in the industry?
Yeah, well, it's Tom Cook to start. I'll protect my German brand last name, but I got to get that out for the industry. But I did a decade in ad tech at Nexus into the whole AT&T Xandr Warner Media acquisition thing. Then Microsoft for a while, started in more technical consulting and programmatic, moved into enterprise sales at the intersection of big data, clean rooms, identity, enterprise technology for media buyers and sellers. Did that for a long time and then found this company called 12 Labs, which is doing really cool things in the AI space. It's a small research company that is focused on building foundation models for multimodal video understanding. So unlike LLMs that were built for text and are amazing at reasoning on PDF files and text and all the information, we build models that see, hear, and understand and reason on unstructured video data. I'm looking through decades of content and I'm looking for specific moments or actions or expressions, machines that can comprehend sort of what we're watching and seeing on a screen the way that our brains think about it.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so this feels like already the next iteration of what AI is promised to be, right? It started off as becoming as reading a book or reading the internet, and it will end up in real world. And this feels like somewhere in between that.
Yeah, I didn't know this about sort of the world of data before I started this company, but if you look at it by density, video is 90% of the world's enterprise data set. And there's been a lot of attention on LLMs in the world of text and sort of reasoning to become more efficient in our sort of modern day to day. But you think about all of the media operations teams that sit at some of the largest studios in the world that can't find things like Steamboat Willie in the Disney archive because nobody tagged that 70 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's enormous opportunity for the editing community, production community, the advertising industry that thinks about how do I segment ads more effectively? How do I make sure that content is brand safe and compliant to bring similar automation and efficiency into the video space? That's the research that we're really focused on.
Wow. Okay. And it's all coming out of, like you said, you're a research lab. It's an interesting positioning for a business that's also then going in and segmenting media and doing that. So how does that, do you find that those two narratives help each other, or do you find that they interrupt each other?
It's really funny, right? Like we in the ad tech space have like a lot of great marketing decks and like build a lot of applications, but we're an infrastructure company that's kind of showing up in the scene for, relatively the first time. I joined the company in July to start really like building a presence for the business in media and advertising. But our co-founders were PhD track students in the United States doing machine learning degrees that were originally born in Seoul, South Korea. So they went back after their studies to do cyber command defense work, looking at large scale CCTV and drone footage, and realized that like the early transformer model research around what LLMs are, it's not very good at understanding video. The way that an LLM that's built on text looks at video is to take pictures of frames every 6 to 12 seconds, convert that into tokens and try to guess what happens. If you want to like get better at the model's performance, it's obviously not a great way to understand what's happening in video content. You take more pictures of more frames, and that's really expensive. So we have this like amazing sort of round up research background to build a business, and then have gone out into horizontal industries where we have to think about how do we productize this? How do we commercialize it? In ad tech, that's how do publishers think about landing segmentation in ad servers and SSPs and DSPs, the world that I come from. So it's a really fun space.
Yeah.
I'm kind of out ad tech, but still kind of back in it. And the creator economy is exploding. You can imagine that one of the biggest problems that creators and networks have is managing the explosion of UGC data. Right, there's more than 500 million hours of video content getting uploaded to YouTube like on a daily basis.
Right.
How do you manage all that?
Okay, so I had actually an interesting, or what I thought was an interesting point earlier, which was I see a lot of, obviously in ad tech market, you see a lot of businesses that fulfill that promise of classify the thing, segment it, and then push it out for sales. Contextual businesses rife everywhere, and so you sort of alluded to the fact that as a research and infrastructure heavy company, the methodology, the magic is in the methodology almost, as a sort of maybe a more blunt sort of instrument on the other side, which is just classifying a video by words and by its metadata.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, I think the way I think about it as like a OG ad tech person is we started treating video when like, especially when CTV became a thing in like 2017, 2018, then exploded in 2020, was like treating it like text, like treating it like banner ads. We have like genre classification and shallow signals about what's happening in content, but we have no scene level intelligence about what's actually happening on the screen. And so we didn't like re-architect the infrastructure for delivering ads around what was built for the open web. And that's where I see a lot of the opportunity is to get really deep about the content, the expression, who it's built for, to start to personalize that. And like the first thing that we focused on in like addressable TV and CTV inventory was really just like replacing cookies. Like, how do I use clean rooms to match data sets? And that's not personalizing on context, that's personalizing on the user. So I look at a lot of the disruption that will come in the video space is going to be around understanding how to match content and creative to what's actually sort of built in the production house for the consumer itself.
Yeah, right. And the technology, because of what it is, it will, once you start doing that, it will start to uncover maybe 2, 3, 4 layers of intent rather than just a broad sweeping one.
Yeah, I think one of the ones I get a lot, like the pushback I get on this, and there's companies in the market that are doing this, is like, if I get so granular in the content, I'm going to really start to shrink the audience that I'm trying to address.
Yes, exactly.
But a very basic use case is like, for larger, VOD libraries that contain sports documentaries and sitcoms, sports usually monetizes better at a higher CPM for the publisher.
Yeah.
And there's so many moments that I would watch in Modern Family of like a football game or a basketball game that goes into an ad break that doesn't get classified as sports to be rolled into that package because it's classified as a sitcom. And so that's a really basic thing where it's just, I'm going to understand the inventory that I actually sit on top of to start to package it differently for media buyers to the benefit of the brand. Those are great moments within warm living room scenes that, Nike could participate in if they knew it was sports.
Yep. Okay. That makes sense. I have one question that sort of relates to before we get to the creator economy piece, which you mentioned, and I really want to jump into as well. But you mentioned earlier as well that it's a developer ecosystem really comes to you, right? How does that change your go-to-market motions, and how does that change how you find customers and how has it yielded any surprises? It must, I guess, if you see organically who's using your products, you must find a few little surprise nuggets in there that you can then blow up into a real commercial strategy.
Yeah. So like our first customers found us. So we've been working on this for 6 years. It takes a long time. I get a question a lot is like, are you related to 11 Labs? 12 Labs actually.
Sure. Yeah.
11.
I was gonna ask that question. I thought you'd about it too many times.
It's a like native multimodal video understanding is one of the hardest science problems in the world because video has multiple modalities that you need to track over space and time for a machine to understand it. So that example I gave of an LLM that treats it like, pictures every 6 to 12 seconds doesn't work at scale to understand with a machine what's actually happening. So we had to like literally build ground up, a model that can take content, index it, create vector embeddings. Vector embeddings are the data format machines speak to that track vision, audio, like the sound that's spoken, what's playing in the background, transcription, how that moves over sequences of time. That's like the cognitive reasoning that we have. What's cool is like the first biggest customers that found us were the largest media companies in the world.
Right.
Like one of the examples that we've talked about on stage with the NFL is like nobody thought to start logging. Many people sitting watching football games every year, nobody started tagging when Travis Kelce was making heart signs to Taylor Swift. That's something that should be able to go retrieve, right?
Yeah.
A viral cultural moment to participate in that nobody could have monetized, nobody could have gotten out to social. So from there, right, it's like we launched in AWS Bedrock last year. That's like kind of the supermarket for AI models in AWS.
Yeah.
Customers never have to move their data. They can start using our models. We start seeing smart home manufacturing companies, automotive manufacturing companies, commercial security companies using our models. And what's hard as like a small revenue team that's product led is like, we want to know who those people are and figure out what they're building. So we're starting to do that, which is really exciting because AI is only so good as the business value it delivers. So we want to get better at going and consulting them how to use the model, how to build products to make them more intelligent in their video workloads.
And I presume that when you're talking about smart home and these sorts of vendors, they're not talking about monetization the same way that a media company is. They're
very different world for me, right? Like they're thinking about how do I understand that, the edge device that I have captured somebody delivered my groceries. How do I like rapidly send a push notification to somebody that's sitting at the office? Let me know it's delivered. Video AI should be really good at that. Let me transcribe it. Maybe the groceries weren't delivered on the front doorstep. They were like left beneath the stairs. Models can do that. But that's a completely different use case than going and talking to a streaming publisher about how to monetize more effectively.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's something that you're having a developer ecosystem and an infrastructure-based product would give you those little seeds of clues that that you may have not thought of yourself.
You start seeing mass, and then it's like maybe we should go invest in more people and more time making this work. And that's kind of how we've grown through different cycles.
It's really interesting, and it that sort of, I guess, brings us full circle to this topic of the creator economy, which is a vertical. I don't know if you call it a vertical, but it's an area you look after in your role. And you mentioned obviously just Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, which is that moment, that viral moment, that unexpected live moment that just would not have gone monetized in a traditional format with traditional data collection and a traditional sort of media company in that way. The creator economy is going to be full of that, right? So is the objective to unearn in real time these new moments for these businesses and turn that into an entirely new kind of monetization package, product, etc.?
I think we've started like really following the path from like content being created to like monetizing that, finding demand for advertisers to match to that, to measuring campaigns, and then these new like AI licensing revenue streams. So if I were to start from the beginning, like the most exciting thing that we announced at NAB last week was we built what we see in the like research community as the first multi-step reasoning agent for video data. So mostly we're an API, we're a developer product, but we built an application for creators, post-production teams to drop in their whole library of footage, chat with it like ChatGPT, and get to a quick sizzle reel that goes in like multiple vertical video formats. So if I'm a creator and think of like Mr. Beast, right? Like I just shot, 3 hours of content. If I'm Signal and Noise, I just shot interviews all day. I want to drop all of that in and get to like a 1 minute sizzle reel and have that in multiple aspect ratios. So that's like content production and what we're doing. Then it's like, I need to go and connect this to brands. I want to make sure that that's brand safe and compliant. People didn't smoke or swear, things that, a Nike as an advertiser wouldn't want the content. You can use AI to automate all of that and look at rules. Then you want to think about like matching brands to creators, right? Like so many problems in networks is that all the network sees is how many followers somebody has and what they generally talk about. But there's nothing that can actually take an RFP from an advertiser and search within the library to say, maybe this nano creator is actually the perfect brand for, or perfect creator for me.
Wow,
So
yeah.
now I'm helping creators monetize more effectively in an agency paradigm. Then I want to measure things. When did the logo appear? What was mentioned? What timestamp did all these things happen? That starts to inform post-campaign reporting. And then, like, I'm a big network. I have all this data, like all the big AI labs, like OpenAI and Anthropic, they're trying to buy data to train on. So I have all this video. You can't just like raw dump a data file. I need to annotate that. I just say, this is the value of the data you're looking for. I can search for all of that. I can annotate it, and now I can market or commercialize it. So we're starting to like get it, right? Like we kind of have video pain in every step of the workflow.
Yeah.
All those things are either like human computed, or there's computer vision technology, which can tell you what's in a frame, but it can't tell you what happened in the scene.
Sure.
So that's really where we start to step in and differentiate.
Yeah, and I think what fascinates me most about what you're saying there is like just the caliber of tools that are available to, not just multi-million-dollar enterprises, but individual creators sometimes who are solopreneurs. And I could hear Rio and Brett's ears prick up as well for signal and noise when you're talking to your video library. So you may have another customer there, but that's the idea, right? You can almost democratize the idea of talking to video, or doesn't matter how big or small you are.
I think the big changes that we see are both in performance and cost. So computer vision was a great solution, and we still work in conjunction with computer vision models a lot. Think of like brand sponsorship measurement. I was fascinated to learn this. Like when Coke does, and using general figures, like when a brand does a deal with the NBA finals to integrate into the game, people are still hiring at measurement companies, like people around the country, to watch that broadcast, count how many times the logo appeared, and that is your reporting panel. Like, you should not be like hiring people to watch basketball games. Like, imagine how many college students are watching that game and just saying, yeah, 45, like whatever. So I think like computer vision though is really good at identifying it was in this frame. And like what you don't want to do is have a computer vision model that's pretty expensive, sample every frame in a 3-hour NBA finals broadcast. You should be using AI more effectively to get to a more cost-effective pipeline. Now the performance is there where like models can natively understand and think like our brain, that I can start to add all of these features and capabilities. What didn't exist 3 years ago was both like the performance and being able to reason like that, and then the cost. So a lot of people I talk to were like, I tried this with an LLM, I tried this with a computer vision model, I gave up because the ROI didn't work. It was so expensive that I couldn't sell this at a CPM, or I couldn't inject into my buying workflow because all the ROI broke down. So that's like the really cool thing, is a lot of science projects that were treated as failed experience, like now are kind of like things that we're picking up and doing with customers.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like your experience has given you a really good lateral understanding of connecting the dots of all these ambiguous areas you're going into, but that may just turn into something completely different in a year. Or
yeah, I would say like the whole App Nexus thing into like AT&T trying to become a media company, and then Microsoft doing all the things was definitely a good place to learn.
Absolutely. Well, look, Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and make sure you enjoy the rest of Possible. Try to grab some solo time without corporate events, and we'll see you next time.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
House from Possible 2026, day 2. We're getting towards the end of the day. I have the Global Chief Revenue Officer of Mutinex Group, Todd Eulis, just today, who has got a lot of, one, I want you to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and about Mutinex. You were educating me ahead of the pod. I apologize for not doing my deep homework on the topic, but a lot of creator economy conversation, and I think there's going to be some interesting topics to cover here. But tell us a little bit about Mutinex and about your sort of journey into the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Todd Eulis, Global Chief Revenue Officer of Mutinex Group. I've been in digital marketing for 26 years, so I started when I was 3.
Funny man.
So yeah, I've been my 4th company in 26 years, and kind of you find a pain point, you solve the pain point, you build the business, and then you sell the business. That's it. And I started off at a company called Traffic Marketplace. We were one of the biggest ad networks in the world. Sold to Universal for $160 million in 2001. Solved the problem of performance economics back in 2001. Yeah, the economy was down. Then
solve the problem of performance economics. Can you qualify that?
Yeah. So think about what happened in 2000. Yeah. Obviously all the .coms went like this in terms of bust. Yeah. So publishers were hurting. They were looking for new format ad units. And we kind of brought to the marketplace this thing called the pop under ad unit, Netflix, X10. Yeah. So you can blame me. Yeah. On SportsCenter, they said, we're in more places than an X10 camera. So we powered the distribution pipeline behind that. And it was really distribution that I built.
Yeah.
So, Universal took notice, bought a company that was highly profitable.
And this is pop under technology. This was how to serve ads. Yeah, it was funny that Rio and I, like the co-host of Signal and Noise, were part of a company called Pop-Up Technologies that was, and it was the first pop-up, or one of the early pops, rich media.
We were more invasive. We were less invasive.
Yeah, interstitials, and it was right at that period where there was the collapse, and they basically had done a small raise, and then just revenue went down the tube. We actually ended up trying to resuscitate the business, and that's how we kind of got our start in ad tech. And it was early days. This was still when they were delivering the internet on like AOL discs through the mail with the modem dial-up. You remember that?
I remember that. Hey, my mother never wanted to cancel her AOL email subscription because she'd lose her email address.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah, exactly. So you did that, and then keep going.
So we ended up selling that, and then a friend of mine from college, he calls me up. He was scuba diving with a guy named Dane Cook in Ecuador looking for sunken treasure, and he knew I knew digital marketing. I go, who's Dane Cook and what does he sing? Ended up producing Dane Cook. We took Dane to the marketplace, and I got the AOR for Comedy Central Records for a number of years. And my buddy won a bunch of Grammys. I worked with all the top comedians of the world. With MySpace, so social media ads back in 2004. Vertically integrated in the comedy space because comedy marketing, a problem, was underserved.
Yeah.
Right.
And were you into comedy? Because I think I saw that on your LinkedIn profile.
I'm not funny.
Like mediocre comedy.
Yeah.
Or,
I'm not funny. You ask my children.
That's funny.
I ask my older daughter. I say, okay, what rhymes with dad, like dad jokes? She goes, bad. I go, no, daughter, rad jokes. So
you're like, those are dad jokes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. See, you can empathize with me. So
you probably had a little bit of experience with this.
Comedy. Working with comedians, you learn about delivery. A lot of it's delivery and communication.
And timing.
Yeah, timing is everything. Obviously, what you guys are doing, obviously, with Signal Noise Podcast, it's like timing, delivery, communication. It's essential. So, it was, comedy marketing centers. We can do an hour and a half long podcast. I can spend probably the whole time telling you stories about comedians and stuff that we've worked with.
Yeah. There's probably highs and lows
Yeah.
with comedians, right? Like there's the highs, which are extremely hilarious, but then there's a dark side to a lot of very funny people, right? It's almost like
it really is.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Well, some of these comedians are geniuses. But they're just not able to live in a real world.
Yeah.
And but obviously
you almost need the audience validation when they're on stage, right? And they get off the stage, and you're like, now you've got to adapt to kind of a different audience environment, right? And I've hung out with a lot of comedians that like practice their routines on you all the time.
Oh yeah.
But once you get past the routine, right? Then what?
Who are you?
When, the naked truth comes to the surface, right? Yeah, it's interesting that we're talking about this, but
we can do a longer podcast about this, and I could definitely go into more stories. Then I ended up selling that asset back in 2010, 2011. And, I ended up working for a company called ad.net, which basically, we isolated a pain point. Google was monopolistic. So we built an incremental search marketplace, kind of ran sales and marketing there for about 14 years.
Yeah.
Sold a, portion of the company, and then
an incremental search marketplace. So tell me how that was.
So basically put search results on websites, search.
Yeah.
Brands really wanted to diversify because,
and you're syndicating the Google search.
Our own, we built a direct business.
Yeah. Yeah.
So because it was a pain point that I had. Find a problem,
like
solve
directory search, like classic.
You put ads on like little listings.
Yeah.
So on, within, publisher ecosystems.
Yeah.
So I ended up selling that, and we ended up selling a portion of that entity. And then, I came aboard Nomics Group and saw what Nomics Group was doing holistically.
Yeah.
Find a problem, solve the problem, scale the business, and sell it. It's been my trajectory. All three companies I've been at, and kind of seeing what Nomics was doing. Nomics is a holding company. Nomics started about 3 years ago as Shopnomics. Right. And company scales significantly. Shopnomics is in the performance marketing standpoint, works with some of the biggest brands in the world, and kind of gets some increased distribution. And over the past couple of years through acquisitions, Nomics, built the system, commerce everywhere, solving the problem of fragmentation. Yeah. And what that really means is that, where do users interact? And that leads us to some of the acquisitions we've done. We have a company called Creatornomics where we have access to 400,000 creators. And we also hard launched today at Possible Fanomics, which is our AI-driven content studio. So creators can be both real and synthetic.
Yeah, and so that's entirely synthetic. That's creating creators that fit 100 or 1,000 different molds. Is that what?
Yeah, it's in essence when you build a technology piece, you have you queue the system, right? So let's say you want to take for example, we're here in Miami.
Yep.
let's say a hurricane's barreling down on Miami, right? Demand immediately spikes for things like generators, water, plywood. Okay, so let's say a brand wants to capture that demand real time. We can go from media brief to creative development to execution to optimization and scale within a matter of minutes, right? Through our Fanomics technology. And then we have the performance infrastructure through our Shopnomics team, as well as our, creator team to activate cross-channel creator economy, as well as kind of traditional medias, like a New York Times or media activations like that.
So what is the fundamental technology behind Fanomics? Because that's where, like, because you made it like a cognitive leap there that I'm like, I thought Fanomics were synthetic creators.
It's our technology that we've built, and we actually queue the
and what is a synthetic creator? Let's define that. Is that an individual? Like, I've got a profile, I'm a person, I've got an appearance, I've got likes and dislikes, right?
You've read a good point. Let's say, for example, you're a product, Home Depot wants to reach men in Miami that are homeowners in a certain demographic. We can tune the engine to spit out the AI creator within those demographic profiles.
So this would be someone that matches both kind of behaviorally, demographically, the audience you're trying to target, imitates that audience, talks to that audience, like, hi, I'm Jesse. You're and so because I was trying to make that connection between how would that work in the case of a hurricane hitting, and people and there's a drive in demand due to this.
We can have qualified people, both real creators can activate, which takes a little bit of time.
Giving advice. And then what's the distribution mechanism behind? So you got this thing, it's trained, it's got some sort of memory system behind it that gives it human-like quality. So talk to me about that. How are you building that?
We've built the distribution platform. We're connected to every single, we're connected, as we were talking about earlier before the podcast, AI agents. We're connected to all media platforms. So we distribute it on our own kind of media execution.
But how do you make the synthetic persona? What's the intel behind that?
Think about a media brief. Think about an agent will do a media brief. We basically take the media brief and put it into our platform, and then it spits out, these are the core functions on the media brief. So think about it. People have to hire creative agency studios. And then when the cost of production is compressed, let's say there's an example for any media execution, take Home Depot. Say they have a media execution of $1 million. Okay, they're going to have to allocate X amount to creative production, X account to media, X account to staff or whatever agency fees they have. Let's say we're able to compress that cost to pennies on the dollar for the creative execution. If there's still $100,000, where does that go? The money is going to go into performance marketing. So you're going to see more brands reinvesting dollars. Think about,
and is that the budget you're cornering? Right. And performance marketing. And so the asset you're delivering to Home Depot is we're saying, hey, Home Depot, we're going to give you a synthetic agent, right? That like could fit a couple different flavors. Maybe there's a host of them. They've got avatars, they've got personalities. We've somehow trained a memory system so that they can deliver probably some conversational interface. So you can talk and chat with them. They're giving advice to a specific audience around a specific problem to buy a certain product to meet a need. Like in the example of Home Depot, like you need to prepare for coming, and it's done in a more human delivery model versus just a targeted ad.
Exactly.
A targeted banner ad.
Creative velocity is a competitive advantage. Because you think about the problem that brands are facing right now, right? Fragmentation. People can start the consumer journey on TikTok. They can start it on search. They can start on a conversational agent. Fragmentation, right? The media is more fragmented than ever. One click does no longer tell the story anymore. 2, speed. If you don't capture that demand, your competitors are going to. 3, you need to be able to perform. We've moved to an outcome-based economy. Everything we do has a performance aspect behind it. Vanity's gone. It's all about performance. And when the dollars...
And you're humanizing that performance, right? As opposed to the old world of sort of direct response marketing where it's like, buy now, get the super chamois, limited time offer, right? A lot of that was meant to drive action, whether it was late night television or it was an ad or a retargeted, or an email that you're getting that's trying to get you to commit some sort of action. This is saying, no, we're going to actually, because to me, that's the unique value. Selling like all this other stuff, to me, it's like, hey, you're having a human or a simulated human, right? Which is either a creator that's part of your creator network or a simulated human delivering a humanistic message tied to a very specific problem that they're facing at a point in time, and you're zeroing in on budget that is ordinarily just dedicated to performance marketing, old performance marketing. So it's almost like a next generation of performance marketing. And so to me, that's really interesting. And what are I want to know what the distribution mechanisms are for like Agent A attacking the hurricane problem in Miami, right? On behalf of Home Depot, that's the use case here. Is that going through TikTok video? Is it going through short form videos? How is it being delivered?
All of the above. So I'm glad you kind of use a late night TV example. Yeah. We can bring back Billy Mays. We can bring back the ShamWow guy. We can bring back, the clapper, cha-cha-cha-chia. So what gave rise to performance marketing? I mean, what gave rise to late night television? Okay. Cost of creative was cheap. Late night TV spots were cheap. Okay. So while traditional, Super Bowl ads or, ads during, the Knicks game when they lose to a team that's trying to lose, the Hawks, don't take it personally. You are a Laker fan like myself, so we can talk about that. It'll be fun. You have LA and New York, you have New York and Boston, it'll be fun.
Yeah, totally. You want the better
you want the better ratings, Nobody wants, no offense to any listeners in Atlanta.
Nobody wants to see the Hawks.
Hey, you said it, not me, Brett. So, think about the rise of it. There's two cost savings, right? All right. So let's say there's always a finite amount of dollars. Dollars just move one way or the other. Literally Billy Mays or the ShamWow guy showing a product. You don't have to do big creative production. 2, TV spots are cheap late at night. Okay. So think about if we can minimize those costs, like QVC, same thing. Think about minimize those costs by creative with our AI creative studio, as well as, we built the distribution infrastructure with every platform, almost every platform online. So we have so much buying power. So we help these brands save costs. So we're kind of taking the performance model to the AI. Most people are looking at, can I reach these creators? Do they want to promote my product? Can I put this product in? It's very read and react. Not looking at what the future of the creator economy can be. And ultimately, too, then you're probably going to ask me, are the creators concerned that there's potentially synthetic creators that could take their jobs?
Is that disintermediating the actual human creators, right?
And the answer is actually going to be no. The answer is actually going to be, it's going to help creators. And I'll tell you why. Let's say you're a creator. You can what's your most valuable? What do you want to do? You want to create. There's only 24 hours in the day.
Your most valuable commodity is time.
Exactly. So we can help creators actually do more. So it's like, okay, we're going to mirror your likeness, your partners, you're engaged with us. We can help the creators even deploy. Think about that 3 or 4 dimensions down the line, where this is an asset to ultimately creators as well as brands for cost savings.
Is that in production right now? Are you actually taking that 400,000 person creator networks that you have, right?
So
and giving them synthetic extensions
building
of themselves?
It's not far off for us to do. We have the core technology to do it.
Said like a chief revenue officer, right? No, it's not live today.
But
but it could be. No.
I mean, so for us, nomics itself, it's really nomics is the economics of shopping. Right. And think about what's happening right now in America, starting to happen, is kind of more like what's been happening in China. Bing. TikTok is live shopping. Think about if you're able to interact with a creator right then and there and purchase. And then ultimately, creators are we were talking before.
They will drop ship this shit directly from the warehouse, like the TikTok model, right?
Do your children trust creators more than they trust the New York Times?
Yeah, and we did talk about this. Yeah, they're certainly on TikTok, and when I do hear an occasional Candace Owen quote, I fall off my chair, and I'm like, do you realize what you're listening to? And please interrogate those messages, because it may not be the truth. But that's the type of stuff that's seeping into the minds of non-political young kids and teenagers and college kids, because those are the creators. They're the people that are, creating sound bites, creating clickbait, right? Magnifying messages in these kind of quick form, short form videos.
Is CNN not clickbait?
Yeah, it's certainly not. CNN's that clickbait in the sense of the always on Trump controversy or the always on war footage, right? There's a clickbaitishness to that because it's all like, hey, we're attracted to the negative news, but I don't think from a younger generation perspective, it's nearly as engaging as, to your point, the short form video.
Well, think about, look, any media ecosystem survives and thrives when you build community. Right. And it's really all we're solving for. There's really no new business models. Brands want to reach consumers the most effective manner. Publishers want to maximize their eyeballs and revenue.
Yeah.
There's different mousetraps to get there. That's what being in this space for close to 30 years has taught me. You know, right now, think about who the trusted source is. How do you build community, right? Okay, maybe a Generation Z is building community through TikTok. Maybe, you know, people like, you know, old like us will build community going to watch a sports game, talking about the Knicks, talking about basketball, talking about 1973.
Holding on to that MySpace account.
Holding on to that MySpace. I don't know. Did Tom call you back? He didn't call me back. So, you know, you think about that and, you know, it's not, I've learned to kind of put judgment aside and just be objective on these things.
Yeah.
You know, if the children relate to it, great. And that's really the dollars are shifting. I mean, think about what the creator economy is doing. You know, if by the whole live shopping experience, what are you taking dollars away from? Yeah. It's moving away from traditional going to the mall because you can literally try things on. You can have stuff like right then and there. And, you know, creators are their trusted source. This creator is going to create this. And then ultimately, you know, having that platform holistically to help amplify creators, help scale creators, and just literally take care of the creators, partners that you have, because they are the publishers.
Yeah. My last organization, we did some analysis. It was a company called Media Radar that did media intelligence. We did some analysis on time spent in various media channels, and we looked at sort of direct live sports experiences, right? A Hollywood economy, meaning produced content, not always long form, but more often than not long form. And then we looked at like creator economy, which was short form video. And there's been in the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a huge shift from production to creator in terms of total time spent, total audience engagement. The live sports environments and live event environments have pretty much stayed the same. So that seems to be, it's like about 20%. But I think there was a shift that I think about 70%, 60 to 70% of total time spent is now being spent in creator oriented, whether it's YouTube, you know, TikTok, etc. Right. So it's content, right? They're even taking longer form content and breaking it down into, what do they call those? The vertical soap opera media, you know what I'm talking about? Where they take like a long form media like it's an hour-long episode and they break it down to 3-minute increments. And you have to, and they gamify it. So you get points for going on to the next 3-minute episode, right? And it's always a cliffhanger. And they end up changing the monetization model for long form content, because that 1-hour episode that you would normally pay, let's say $3.99 to download, they're now getting $20 for, because they've been able to monetize along the entire path and get people sort of addicted to every next chapter of this basically hour-long episode, right? So it seems like everything's moving towards that short form. Do you think that is a positive sign from a social and societal perspective? Do you think we're losing the ability to, do you think it's like mass attention deficit disorder? I think is kind of my question. Like, are we losing the ability to focus on longer form, deeper narrative content because we're so addicted to short form, instant gratification type of content?
We're getting philosophical now.
You know, I figured we get that.
So it's neither good nor bad.
Yeah.
Way to not answer the question, right?
Don't judge.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's just the way people are living in the world that we exist in today. You know, and you know, us as people can make the decision. Okay, do we have a safe space where you know, maybe you have a family dinner?
Yeah.
You know, things like that.
Yeah.
So
you compartmentalize.
Yeah, exactly. You have to compartmentalize everything. I mean, you know, look, we have, and a lot of this as a culture, this is our own doing. You know, I mean, think about it when, you know, the 3 channel, I mean, I grew up, you know, it was like you have 3 channels, maybe Fox got introduced at some point, maybe there's 4, but you know, it's an aspect of culture. You know, when you have 1,000 options, you know, it does become overwhelming. You know, people say like, you know, hey, like the DVR is the big, I mean, I think the remote control is the biggest like invention, because like you have to get up and physically go switch the channel and turn the rabbit ears. So it's like, if I don't like it, I can move it right now. And, you know, usually all this stuff is like, you know, it's not good nor bad. It's just the way our world commits. But I think from a communication standpoint, it forces us to be clear and direct. You think about it, you have, you know, people do long-winded stories, like just give me the results, give me the numbers. So while we're saying we're in attention, like, okay, if you want to call it attention deficit, I'm not going to disagree with you. But what I'm also saying is that
get to the point quickly.
Well, yeah, it forces us to be concise.
Right.
It forces concision. Cut through the signal and the noise. See, I bring it back to you guys. So you know, so it forces us a culture to do that. And then I'm a Leo, so I'm the internal optimist. I look at it. What does this allow us to do? If we're not spending time on things that don't matter, it frees us up to do things that do matter. And that's why I look at, what's happening with AI, it frees us up to do the things that will matter.
Yeah.
Have conversations with good people, brainstorm, spend more time with our family. So think about it. If you were to kind of look at
get the grunt work, get the busy work done.
If you were to think about like industrialization, the coal miners, kind of like went in and said, okay, hey, this industrialization is going to take my jobs. I'm going to lose my job in the coal mine. Yes, but it'll save you emphysema.
Yeah.
But I'll have my job.
Yeah.
You don't see the horses complaining when cars came.
Yeah.
The people that fight innovation are usually, fear, love. You can arguably say that fear is more powerful than love. I'm afraid of this. We're saying, okay, what is AI going to do for me? It can help amplify my message. It can get the right message to the right person. It can even agents can help me free up my time so I can either A, be more productive, or B, spend more time doing things that matter and not doing the rote tasks. Like how often do you look at your flights to potentially change seats? What if an agent does that for you?
Yeah.
You don't have to spend time literally clicking on your, exactly.
Yeah, and it's sort of that abundance mindset versus the scarcity mindset, right?
Exactly.
It's this like, how do you take this as an opportunity to create sort of a better world as opposed to pushing back to say this is wrong, because and it's hard when you're in it. When we're living in it, it's hard to kind of pull out and see what's actually happening at a macro level. But back to the creator economy. So I want to understand, and get your thoughts on sort of how creator networks have grown. What percentage of media investment? Because you're saying it's sort of the new publisher work.
The amount of time spent on it's an friend of mine and kind of wrote a story on this. Like it's a underinvestment based on like the amount of time spent.
Yeah.
There is, it's ultimately there is a dollars from an agency, holdco, and brand perspective take a while to shift.
Yeah.
Because I used to say nobody gets fired for buying more Google.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm doing what I did and it's more safe. I'm choosing an example.
And there's a lot of creator-specific agencies. Do you guys play that role? Or are you giving a marketplace?
More marketplace. Right. Like the you think about any new innovation's always quote unquote the bastard stepchild of any organization.
Yeah.
So anytime you bring in a new piece, what happens? Oh, if there's a finite dollars against something, say $1 million, if new dollars come in, where's it going to pull?
Yeah.
So people are motivated by fear, and that's part of the problem that we, obviously, where channels, people focused on channels and saying my channel did it better than this because they're afraid of showing things that not work, for just looking at a holistic perspective. Versus if you have a CMO of, Coca-Cola, they just care about Coca-Cola brand.
Yeah.
They don't care about, does this channel do better than that? They don't care.
Yeah.
They care about their brand. And so the issue is not the fact that creators here, the issue is the execution and fear to kind of follow the money. These are short-term fears.
Yeah.
We know that the eyeballs are here, the dollars will follow. I learned life, you can't time when things are going to happen. It's not about being right, it's about being right at the right time.
Yeah, and so do we think that creator advertising? So it seems like you guys are
it will.
You're skimming off the performance marketing box.
Yeah, currently,
right?
But there's, ultimately creators engage more mid-funnel, upper funnel.
Yeah.
The lower funnel is, it's a place to start, but as the business goes up, more brands, more agencies get more comfortable with what creators are doing, the dollars will continue to follow.
Yeah. And you have some sort of rev share agreement where you say, hey, we're gonna put you on our network. You're going to be promoted. Like how does your creator?
Yeah,
work?
I mean,
is
look,
it like a G2 crowd for creators, right? Where there's rankings and reviews and so topics that you can pick, like creator that's a subject matter expert in this or this or this, so you can start to align them.
That's where the infrastructure is going to have to go. You're going to have to kind of mirror the existing models. I mean, like it comes back to kind of what I said before. There's just new mousetraps. It's the same business models. You're going to have to mirror, to your point. And these are some of them. And what we've done at Nomics is build the distribution infrastructure and layer behind it to be able to track performance. Because think about it, the value is really in the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And then when the infrastructure is set, because it's the same amount of work let's go back to Coca-Cola, to onboard something for $5,000 or $5 million. It's really the same infrastructure. You have to be able to build scalable infrastructure in order to be able to plug in. So will the creator models evolve to where folks are used to buying? Of course.
Yeah.
That becomes more easy to buy in the long run. And this is part of the reason why it's, kind of what you said, or one of us said, kind of the dollars will follow at some point when the infrastructure is fully scaled out for the creator economy. But, if people aren't focused on the creator economy, I mean, that's really where the money is going to go.
Yeah.
And it's really part of how we wanted to tackle it, obviously, the performance infrastructure, the creator relationships, as well as, oh, by the way, we have synthetic creators, which can save cost savings to Coca-Cola, millions of dollars to, a few $100s. And then that money can be reinvested to actually driving performance as the glut of performance economy goes up.
Yeah. And so
it's outcome-based economies.
Yeah. And are you partnering with agencies that connect creators to brands and just providing the infrastructure underneath it? Or are you actually playing that role of the middleman between brands and then creators they want to align themselves to push brand or product?
We're a platform. We're Commerce Everywhere platform. We're not an agency.
Yeah.
So in essence, an Omnicom or a Publicis would be a partner of ours. Hey, how are you doing? We can help you reach this. What's your strategic objective? Even with the Fanomics piece, what's your media brief? We're going to put our media brief in our technology, build creatives for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're charging a subscription type of.
Yeah. I mean, there's multiple pricing models. It depends. I mean, we have, since we have obviously the technology piece for the Fanomics, yes, we have different subscription models. But if you combine it with with an execution against our platform, we have flexible pricing models. We have an SMB strategy. We have a, premium strategy.
Yeah. So. And are you finding that a lot of the investment is coming from SMBs and mid-markets, or do you see that enterprises are really moving heavily into this space? The creator space.
I think it's moving a lot faster. If you asked me 3 months ago, things are never as fast as you want them to be, or never as slow as as they really are. So it can always move faster, but the pace is escalating significantly. And it comes to having conversations. I mean, some of the things I presented at Possible today, and people are like, wow. Yeah. So a lot of folks, what you'll see a lot of these ad tech companies they're trying to look at one piece of a pie versus understanding how the whole ecosystem works.
Yeah.
That's why we started, the Nomics group. It's the economics of shopping, and when we look at economics, it's the outcome based. If I were to walk into a brand and say, you know what, we're going to guarantee performance for you. Oh, wow. How are you going to do it?
Yeah.
What problem are you solving?
Yeah.
Fragmentation. How are we doing it? Commerce everywhere, all surfaces, AI agents, right? And we're able to solve that problem through our portfolio of products and services. And that's why we've had significant growth, literally one of the fastest growing private companies based on kind of what we've done. And it's been, stitching it all together, and being able to kind of put the tools in the hands of the partners, and just saying, here, we're the people to go to when you want to activate at scale Coca-Cola, for your entire catalog of every product, do it right away.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Hey, well, thanks for joining us. This was a good conversation. So we haven't talked to anybody about sort of the creator economy specifically and how it's operating in today's sort of media and marketing.
Happy to come back anytime. I can give you stories about comedy and comedians anytime you want. And, we can have a good laugh.
Yeah. Well, enjoy the rest of Signal and Noise. And thanks, man. It was great meeting you.
Thank you, Brett.
Bye.